Welcome back to episode 4 of Fearless Babes and Bros. Today I get to sit with a pastor from Radical, and he was the first person I literally met when I moved to Texas, and his church was literally the first place I went the day after I moved. So I'm excited to sit down with you and just talk and see how you got to where you are now and like the process behind that. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and then we can dive in?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm honored to be here. And yes, it was so cool getting to meet you immediately as you were moving to the state. But yeah, my name is Pastor Trevor Atchley. I'm from originally from Round Rock, Texas, but we planted a church here in Kyle, Texas, just south of Austin, called Radical Church in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. So that was pretty crazy. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I have a wife, Lindsay, two great kids, Oakland and Tegan. They're 4 and 1. They're a handful, but we absolutely love them. And so, yeah, they're in bed. They're getting in bed right now with mom while I'm filming this with you. So that's the dad life and the pastor life. But honored
Yeah.
to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm honestly I'm happy to have you because your church was pretty influential on my life and I really enjoyed it. But I kind of want to talk about, did you always know that you were like your calling was to be a pastor and open a church?
I
Would
did actually, which
Okay.
is what's different. I feel like a lot of people, when they're growing up, they have things that they say they want to be. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a firefighter. And you have all those things when you're a kid. But then sometimes when you're a preteen or you get to high school, you have some of those things where you really start to think, hey, you know what? This might be something I want to do. It was early on though, when I was 4 and 5 years old, that I was singing and playing guitar, singing along to worship music, at church and in chapels and stuff like that when I would go to as a kid. And I started writing music and writing, church songs, worship music, if you will, when I was 8, 9 years old. Then when I was 15, I wrote a song and played it for my chapel. My pastor at the church I was going to at the time asked if I'd play it in front of the whole church, just by myself on a stage. Now, it was a large church in Austin, about, maybe 4 or 5 thousand people, I think at the time. And as a 15-year-old, got in front of everybody on the stage, played that song that I wrote just by myself, never done anything like that before. And I really felt like God spoke to me and said, you're going to do this for the rest of your life. You're going to be a pastor. You're going to be doing music. You're going to be on stage communicating God's word. That's kind of what I got out of that. And so I was that annoying kid that sophomore year in high school, freshman year, I already knew what I wanted to do. Sophomore year, I already knew where I was going to college. Junior year, I already had everything laid out. And some of my friends were, 2 years into college, still trying to figure out what in the world they were doing. And I get it. I totally understand. But for some reason, God was good to me and spoke to me early on that I was going to be a pastor. So it's something I've always wanted to do, something I've always loved. I couldn't imagine myself really doing anything else at this point in life. So,
Yeah. And what called you to Kyle? Because Kyle's so like more of a smaller town.
right, right. So, growing up in Round Rock, it was kind of the same as Kyle is now. So, if north of Austin is a fast growing suburb, and Kyle is a South Austin fast growing suburb, but it's about 15 years, 20 years behind Round Rock. And so this whole area is blowing up. But I grew up there. My family, though, moved to Kyle in 2000. So to put it in perspective, there was 5,000 people here in Kyle, Texas in the year of 2000 when my grandparents first moved here. 2007, my parents moved here. I was a sophomore in high school. There was maybe about 10,000, not really a lot. Today, there's over 58, 60,000 people in Kyle. Even since you have left and moved away, it has grown so much more, even since the time that you were here. And so it's been popping. And I wanted to move home. I felt like God told me to go back to my hometown, tell the people there the good news that there's hope, there's life in Jesus. And so I think there was a lot of my old friends that were here. And I was thinking, I used to work at the old Applebee's around the corner, the Chick-fil-A, and
Oh,
there's
mhm.
like Texas State called the Square, where everybody would go out and party. And I used to be one of those guys that would go out and party on the square when I was kind of running away from my calling for about 8 months to a year. And so I had those people in my mind when I wanted to move back. Luckily, my parents live in the same neighborhood as us. We have kids. That's a huge benefit. But really, at the end of the day, it was God that told us to come back here for sure.
Okay, nice. I would love to kind of touch on um, what it looked like and maybe why you kind of ran away from your calling.
Yeah,
Because you're
absolutely.
young, so this calling was on you at a young age. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an opportunity for everybody to fall into things that we don't want to do. I mean, the writer Paul in the New Testament, he wrote this one verse where basically he's saying, "The things I want to do, I don't do. The things I don't want to
Mm.
do, I do those things." And you could feel the frustration in his voice, right? Almost like the things that I'm battling within me sometimes win. Sometimes the evil desires. There's the you have that picture of the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, and sometimes the fleshly desires and the things that we naturally want as humans win. And so I was in a pretty unhealthy relationship for a while, on and off for years, kind of one of those on and off again things, hoping that it was going to work out the next time you get back together. But of course, it's not.
Yeah.
Everyone around you knows it's awful and you shouldn't do it. And yet we think that we know better than everyone else. So after I got out of that relationship, finally knew that that was the end of that. Went down a dark path for a little bit. Felt like I didn't know who I was without this person. Felt like I didn't know, I had messed up too much. There was no way that God could use me anymore. There was no way that I could still do the things that I felt like He had called me to do. And yet, there were some people in my life that helped pick me back up and remind me, hey, listen, you're young and dumb and you made some dumb mistakes, but man, God can use you the same way that God used David after he had messed up with Bathsheba in the Bible. He had her husband killed and took her as his own wife. I mean, that's pretty messed up. And yet he was the king of Israel and is written in the Bible as a man after God's own heart. But you'd say, well, how is that possible? Well, it's because of grace. It's because of forgiveness. It's because God loves us so much that even in the midst of us being messed up, He can still use us, right? And so I ran away from my calling for a while, not too terribly long, really. It's about 6 to 8 months before I kind of got slapped across the face by myself and people that love me and God. And then I got right back on track to do the things that I knew that God had called me to do, which was to help, spread love to wherever I go.
Yeah. And what did it look like when you were finally ready to step into that for you?
Yeah. So the way that worked, I'd been at a church in Oklahoma for a few years. And the story goes that, I'd had about 5 or 6 people tell me I should start a church. I'd been doing youth, young adults, and I'd been singing. I play guitar, bass, drums, a little bit of piano here and there, but I'd been doing the worship thing, the music thing for a long time. Never did I ever want to be the main guy, the lead pastor, the senior pastor, the head honcho. Didn't want to do that. Um, but I had 4 or 5 people in 2017, January, all tell me at different times in that month that I should start a church. I started to think that they were talking to each other. I thought it was kind of weird, but they said, no, we're not talking to each other at all. And I was like, oh, there's something here. So I walked into my pastor's office for a annual review. All the staff members go in. The first 2 guys go in and they come out just looking defeated and dejected. They just got ripped into. So, and I know these guys really well. So I walk in after these 2 guys come out. I'm so nervous, right? I walk into my pastor's office and he says, you know what, Trev? You're doing a great job. And I was like, oh, Lord, thank you. And he said, I really feel like you have a pastor's heart. You just love people and you'd be a great pastor. In fact, I think you're going to start your own church one day. I said, that's crazy. You're like the 5th or 6th person to tell me that. He said, I'm the 5th or 6th person to tell you that. Have you prayed about this? I said, no, sir. He said, get out of my office. Go right now. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went out and prayed and got this moment with the Lord where I was sitting in front of a gas station just by myself in my car with it still running. And I started praying, Lord, give me the name of this church. I was kind of spitballing with God, if you will. And come on, if I'm going to start this church, you got to give me a name. Give me something, right? And I prayed for 30 minutes, felt real spiritual about it, but I didn't get the name. And so finally I said, you know what? To heck with this. Forget the name. I'm just going to start thanking God for what he has brought me through, for the trials that I've gone through. And yet I'm stronger out on the other side of them. God's been good to me. So I say, thank you, Lord, for everything you've done. God, would you just make me a radical believer, somebody that goes after you with everything I have? God, would you make me a radical worshiper? That when I worship you, people want to go into the throne room with me. Would you give me radical boldness that I would speak your name and hope into the darkest places in people's lives? And so radical this, radical that. And then the name Radical Church popped into my head. It was kind of in one ear, out the other. Um, just thought that's kind of edgy. It's kind of cool, kind of like me, a little edgy, a little different. Okay, let's maybe pack that away. That was on a Friday. So then on Sunday, I go into church and a lady who just hears from God. I always describe this lady as, if you come into church and you've been sinning throughout the week, don't get near Dee Dee Outlaw. That was her name. All right. Dee Dee Outlaw. That tells you everything you need to know. But she just hears from the Lord. It's incredible. And so she came up to me, made a beeline in our prayer meeting that Sunday night, snatched my hand out of the air and just started saying, radical preaching, radical worship, radical boldness, multifaceted radical. Your word is radical. I ain't never said this word in my life, baby, but that is your word. And I said, wow, Dee Dee, this is incredible. Like, do you have any idea what you've just done? I hadn't told anybody at that point. And she said, no, baby, but I'm going to keep on praying. And she just walks away to the other side of the auditorium and keeps on praying. So I leaned over to my wife. I said, hey, Linz, I think we're going to start a church, and it's going to be called Radical Church. And like any good wife, she looked up to me and said, let's talk about this later. So that was that. And but my pastor, we told him the next day, and I was worried he was going to fire me because I wanted to leave. But he said, no, I told you to go pray about it. And I feel the same way. He said, you're not ready, but let's train you up and let's get you ready. And so I went to some trainings with my wife, Lindsay, called CMN. Actually, I'm wearing the hat. What do you know? CMN Launch Training, which is the Church Multiplication Network. They help you get ready to launch your church, get your vision clear and concise to where hey, this is what we're doing. This is what God has called us to do in the city that God's called us to go. Looking up demographic reports, which a lot of that I already knew because I had lived here for many years. And so that was kind of helpful. But man, we went to these trainings, went to conferences, just kind of reaffirming the calling. But then for the next 2 years, I just kept serving at my church in Oklahoma. And we moved back in 2019. And just to get ready for the church in 2020, in February, we had our very first interest party. And then we had 45 people show up to that. It was incredible. And then our second one was in March of 2020, which I think you know where this is going. We had 75 people show up, and it was incredible. We were so stoked. Like, the next one in April is going to be even better. We're going to have 100 people show up. It's going to be awesome. And then COVID hits. And that's kind of where everything, stopped. I think for us initially, for a moment, we were like, well, what in the world are we going to do now? And so for the next few months, all we did, luckily I know digital marketing. That was one of my roles at my church in Oklahoma. It was communications, production, marketing, all that kind of stuff. So I ran some Facebook ads, ran some Instagram ads, and we built our launch team for the church almost entirely over social media and Zoom, which we are on right now. So it's crazy to think that that's how we built our launch team, but God had prepared me with all the experiences I had had over the last few years for that moment. And so I was grateful to have the videography, photography, marketing experience before going into COVID. Because while everybody else was scrambling, having no idea what to do, they'd never used Zoom before in their life, right? I'm like, man, this is, Facebook, Instagram, Google ads, Facebook ads, Zoom. I'm used to all of this. And so let's hop on this thing and see what we can do. And God was good. We had about 50 people on our launch team. We launched the church in September of that year with about 170 people on our first Sunday. So yeah, that's kind of the whole story of how we started Radical Church.
Yeah, that's a great story too. And I was there for the first one.
Were you there for the very first Sunday?
I had moved Saturday. I had gotten there Saturday. And then I got into Texas Saturday. And then Sunday, I went there. I went to the church. And then I went to my apartment and started unpacking.
That's right. And I remember I ended up stopping by your apartment to give you something, if I remember too. It was like
Yeah,
the day that
it
we met
was.
or something.
I think it was. I don't remember what it was for, but it was for something that you guys were doing. I think that day, maybe
Oh
growth
yeah,
track.
to join the photography team because you were on our
Yeah.
photography team for a while you were here.
hmm
I had to give you the packet for Growth Track. I
hmm
stopped by your apartment to give. I remember that now. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was 3 years ago.
Wow, time flies for sure.
I know. But I wanted to also talk about, you said for 2 years after you knew like what God had told you, you still served at your church in Oklahoma.
Yeah,
So what advice would you, because that I feel like could be hard in a way of like the waiting. Um,
yeah.
what advice would you give someone who knows what God's calling them to do, but he hasn't put them in a position to step out to do that? He has them in like a position of waiting.
Yeah, this is something I love to talk about because many times we try to rush things, right? We try to rush our calling. We try to rush that business. We try to rush the relationship. Come on. We try to rush um, into something that could be a good thing, could be something that God has told you to do, could be something that just has always been a passion of yours and something that you've been planning of, thinking of for a long time. But if you are out of time, if you are not in the right timing of it, it will be messed up. And I can guarantee it won't go the way that you want it to. All things in good timing. So there's a story in the Bible of David. He gets anointed to be the king of Israel. And he's just this shepherd, and his dad didn't even want to bring him over. He had all his other brothers there, and his dad didn't even bring him over to the prophet to even be considered to be anointed to be the king. And yet, the prophet says, "No, none of these guys are it. Do you have any other kids?" And he said, "Well, I got, David, the shepherd. He's my other boy, but you wouldn't want him, right?" That's kind of what's implied. So he comes over, gets anointed by this prophet to be the king over Israel. But then what does he do right after that? Goes back to tending the sheep. I mean, what does he do after that? He's been anointed, this amazing moment where he's basically told by God what he's supposed to do with his life, what's coming up next. And yet, we're not there yet, right? And there's so many more steps. And scholars think that it was actually up to 15 years before David actually took the throne. What happened in those 15 years is that he went back to tending sheep. He went back to doing the things that he was already doing before, which I think is a powerful thing. I'll touch on in a second. He was tried to be killed by the current king, Saul, because he was jealous. He didn't want to give up the throne, right? So he tries to get killed by the king. He's on the run from all of these men that Saul is sending after him. There's even a story where he goes into a town and he has to act like he's a crazy person. Like he's foaming at the mouth and letting this, his foam come down his beard. And they're like, this guy's crazy. Get him out of here. Just so that they won't recognize him and he won't be killed. He's living in caves. He's hiding out. And you would imagine that David in that moment is thinking, God, what the heck? Like you told me I was going to be the king. And yet this is what's been going on for the last 10 to 15 years. When am I going to step into the thing that you told me that I was going to do? And yet I think there's so much power in the waiting, right? There's a lot of power in learning things along the journey, right? Like this life is a process, it's a journey. Don't try to rush into something that maybe you're not ready for. Prepare yourself, get the training that you need, get the coaching that you need. Maybe you want to start a new business, man, find somebody that has done it before. For me, I wanted to start a church. So we found other pastors that had done it before. We got the training we needed. And then ultimately, I think there's something powerful for me as a pastor to serve somebody else's vision for a while. Maybe you're an employee at a business or a company and you want to go launch or do your own thing. A lot of times people leave because they're mad about the way things are going at the current place that they work. They say, well, to heck with this. I'm going to go start my own thing. Usually when you start your own thing out of anger, probably not a good way to do that. Sometimes it works out, but a lot of times it doesn't. So find somebody that you can submit to, that you can serve, whether it's a personal trainer, man, like I know you're into fitness, like submit to somebody else's business for a while, become an employee of them, learn how they run their business, serve them, get good at what you do, and then let them launch you out eventually. You launch yourself out, and now you have a connection with that person. You're not burning bridges all along the way because you're just worried about getting to the next thing, getting to your thing. So I think there's some power in serving somebody else for a while, being an employee somewhere else, learning, getting coaching, and then doing things in due time. And if we would have left in 2017 when God told us, that this is what we're going to do, I think it would have failed. But we got there right at the time that I think God wanted us to get there, which is right before COVID. Because, think we knew how to do all of that stuff. We knew how to do the marketing. We knew how to do the ads. We knew how to build a team over social media. And that's something that not a lot of people know how to do. And there was a lot of churches that were scrambling, trying to figure out what in the world are we going to be doing right now. And yet we were able to be a church before we ever even launched. We were able to put out services online and bring hope to people through the middle of COVID. We donated thousands of dollars worth of food from local businesses to first responders, to firefighters, to hospital workers, to different people buying clothing and food for families that were in need. I mean, we were able to make a huge difference during that time. And I think if we would have rushed it, man, we would have missed that opportunity. So
That's very good. That's very good. I think there was a lot of knowledge in that.
Yeah.
What do you love about doing ministry?
Ooh, what do I love? Yes, there's a lot of things I love. I love being a pastor. Like I said, I don't think there's anything else I love more. There's nothing else that I would rather do. I love marketing. I love communications. I love social media management, all that kind of stuff. Photography, videography, music. Music was a huge thing for me for years. There's so many interests and passions and hobbies that I have, but pastoring is by far my favorite. The reason for that is because it's all about people, right? And many times I do think pastors, it becomes about themselves. And I think we've seen that over the last few years with some mega pastors and mega, celebrity pastors that have fallen, have fallen into unfortunate events, circumstances in their lives, and where they betrayed the trust of a lot of people around them. And I think that's because it became more about them and their ministry than it did about their family, than it was about God, than it was about the people that they're serving. And like I said, anybody can fall though, right? And so we always have to be on guard from those things. But man, what I love the most about being a pastor is people and getting to invest in leaders, getting to invest in other people. Preaching is always great, but I love good music too. So we always have a poppin' worship set every Sunday, which you probably remember in the cave of the elementary school that we were in, the cafeteria in the elementary school we started in. So the sound was hard to dial in, not gonna lie, but I love that part of it as well. And just seeing the transformation of people's lives. That's the best part. Seeing somebody that was hooked on drugs and alcohol, their life in shambles, and then they find Jesus and things just change. A marriage that was falling apart and they come to church and their life is different. Seeing a middle school girl, this is a story recently that was just really touched my heart, but a middle schooler came to our youth group on a Wednesday night, got saved, brought one of her family members, get saved, brings another family member, gets saved, brings another family member. And then now her entire family has been baptized at our church and comes to our church and is serving at our church and telling others and inviting their friends and telling them about what God has done in their life. And their family is just in this amazing place now. And it was all because of a middle school girl and God doing something in her. So those are the stories that I love the most.
Yeah, that's good. What do you not like so much about ministry?
Oh man, there are some things. I could talk about this forever. In fact, I was just talking about this over the last few days. It can be busy. It can be very, very busy. And that's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. Ministry is not a 9 to 5 job. Being a pastor, people don't realize we work during the day, but y'all are also working during the day. So when people want to talk to the pastor, they call us at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. And so that's tough because we've been working all day. Now it's time to hang out with their family and people are calling us and all kinds of things. And a lot of times there's serious conversations that need to happen though. Hey, like this, person's in the hospital. Would you mind going to visit? Or, this person, got in a car accident and we just really need prayer right now, or we need somebody to, take this kid somewhere, or whatever it might be. Just the things that happen in people's lives, that's what we're here for. And that is the good part of the ministry, but it can also be the bad part if you're not careful. You can let time get away from you, from your family, from your kids. And so trying to be intentional with that is really tough, because many pastors are people pleasers. We just are. We want everyone to like us. We want everyone to, to approve, in a sense. Many pastors are like that. We're kind of the same Enneagram in a lot of ways, but that's me to a T. And this is probably the hardest thing of ministry, is understanding that you're never going to make everybody happy. And that's just leadership 101, right? Like, if you're going to be a leader, you're never going to be able to make everybody happy. Every decision you make is going to make somebody upset, and it's going to make somebody love you. Every sermon I preach is going to make someone happy and make somebody offended, right? There's no way around it. People are going to come, people are going to leave, and understanding that what God has called me to is more important than people's opinions about what they think God has called me to. Now, it doesn't mean I dismiss people, dismiss their opinions. And I love actually getting feedback from people that I care about, people that I trust. Sometimes I love getting feedback from somebody that's new, because they have eyes to see something that maybe the people that have been there for a long time have not seen. But for the most part, a lot of people just want to complain. They want to post stuff on social media that's just not true. They don't know my heart. And that happens to every pastor. It happens to every leader. I was talking to the mayor of Kyle recently, and we related to each other on that on such a deep level that half of the town hates him and half the town loves him. And it's just this crazy thing where you have to serve all of them. And it's the same way as a pastor, whether people like you or not, we're called to love and we're called to serve. And so that can be tough, the time part. And then people just not understanding our heart and the reason why we make the decisions we make and why we do the things we do, and leaving. And it's tough. People are going to leave in your life. It's just tough. But yet we got to move on to do the things that God's called us to do and to reach the people that are right in front of our face. I think that's a big thing.
How do you handle that well? Like, how do you get to a point where you can handle people talking bad about you or posting something on social media or just not liking a sermon? Like, because that obviously, I don't know, maybe I would take it a little personal, but how do you navigate that?
Yeah, leadership is influence. That's one thing. And with influence comes a level of scrutiny that you wouldn't have before. And so I do not envy the megachurch pastors. I really don't. I don't envy the celebrity pastors that have millions of followers, because of the fact that those things, the people that are happy with you and the people that are not happy with you, that just gets amplified as your influence goes up and more people know about you and hear about you and are listening to what you have to say, especially in the world that we live in now. I just preached a message last Sunday all about offense and being offended, and how our world is just such an offendable world. People are so easily offended nowadays. And so when you get on a microphone and are expected to talk for 40 minutes every 7 days, you have to be real careful about what you say, because people just naturally get offended now. I don't live in fear, but I also want to be careful about what I say now, just because everything is on social media, everything's amplified and it lives there forever. You can't just say something and then it's gone, right? Like, it's out there, it's on YouTube, right? And so I think it's tough when people say bad things. It used to hurt me a lot more. In December and January of, December of last year, January of this year, I was really struggling with that. A few people had left. And, posting a few things that I was just like, man, I know that's a subtweet at me. I just know it is. Like, everyone else knows it is. I know it is. People that had left, they're upset. And yet, nobody else knows that what my heart was in the situation. Nobody asked me what my heart was and why I did the things that I did and why I said the things that I said, they just leave and then they want to post stuff. And it's tough. It's really, really hard. Um, but I talked to a pastor, Pastor Ed Newton from Community Bible Church in San Antonio. Incredible guy. He had a huge transition of his church where there was a pastor that was well respected that was in the church, Robert Emmett, and he had started the church, built up the church to tens of thousands of people, and then he transitioned it. Well, a lot of people did not like that he was coming in to this new position and that their pastor was retiring, so they just didn't like this guy. And so Pastor Ed had a lot of people that left and a lot of people that were hurt and a lot of people that said a lot of things that just weren't true about him. And so I asked him, I said, Pastor, how in the world do you deal with this on such a large scale? And he said, I had to get to the place where I had to ask myself, did I do everything that I could to love this person well? Did I do everything I could to reach out to this person if I felt like it was something I needed to do, right? And then he said, that's what you have to figure out as well, is not everybody do you need to reach out to and ask why they're gone or ask why they said this or, some people are just going to leave and they're going to say things. But if you didn't even have a relationship with them in the first place, then don't worry about it, is basically what he said. Um, because it's not somebody that you had a relationship with enough to go after them. And a lot of people will say, well, you got to go after the one. You'll leave the 99 and go find the one. That's about salvation. That's not about going and trying to get people back. No, because if there's somebody that's leaving and they're gone and they're talking trash, they're no longer a sheep. They are a wolf in sheep's clothing. And if you try to get that person to come back, all you're going to do is you're bringing the wolf back into your congregation. And that's the last thing you want to do. There's 99 sheep that are right here, that need your attention and need your love. And many times as pastors, what we do in our efforts to love people well, and sometimes in our insecurities, and this is just life in general, in our insecurities, we wonder, why did this person leave me? Why did this person go? And what we do is we chase after the people that have left and we neglect the people that are right in front of our face. And those are the people that are still rocking with us. Those are the people that love us. Those are the people that have chosen to stay, and yet we're ignoring them to go after the few people who have basically said, you're not my crowd. You're not my guy. So why would we do that? Usually insecurity is why we do that. We want everybody to like us, and man, it's just not going to happen. So it's tough. But he said, man, if there's somebody you really, really love and you want them to come back, and maybe you think that there's something there, they haven't said anything, but you're not sure what's going on, just ask them, hey, like, did I do something to offend you? If I did, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to offend you. Let's talk. Let's have a coffee. And then a lot of times it's just a misunderstanding. So many things happen. It's just misunderstandings. And you can have that conversation, be like, oh, Pastor, I didn't even realize. Or, oh, Sonia, I didn't realize that's what you meant when you said it that way. I thought you were, dissing me or whatever. I thought you meant it like this. No. And it's the same way in marriage, same way in friendship, same way in business. Clarity and communication is really important. So it hurts. It always does. But I've learned to hold people with an open hand, because just like you ended up moving on to bigger and better things. Come on now. You moved on away from our church family, but I hold people with open hands saying, God, these are your people. They are not mine. And so wherever you move them to, whether it's out of state, whether it's to a different church in our city, it doesn't matter. I just want them to be happy. I want them to find a community of people that they can latch onto, that can lift them up in the good times and the bad. And that they can accomplish all that God has for them, whether that's at our church or whether that is somewhere else, whether they're in my life or whether we don't really talk anymore. So yeah, it's tough, but you learn over the years, I suppose.
Yeah, there are a few things in there that I want to kind of dig deeper into.
Sure.
So first it was you stated that you're a little more careful with what you say now. So how do you tackle like the big issues, especially with like a lot of things going on right now? Because I don't believe you shy away from them. Like I think the first sermon that we went to was on politics.
Yeah.
So I know you don't
It's a
shy
great way to
away
start
from,
a church.
yeah. I know you don't shy away from the tough issues, but how do you address that with biblical truth, but yet still loving people? You know, like,
Absolutely. I think you just nailed it. And I would just flip the order that you put those. You talked about biblical truth while still loving people. I think you flip it and you say, we're going to love people and we're also going to give them biblical truth, right? So we lead with love in everything that we do. Every conversation that we have, it has to be out of a place of love. Our society has gotten to a place where we say that love is letting people do whatever they want. Love is letting people think whatever they want to think and say whatever they want to say. We are in a very individualistic culture. We're in the Google culture where everybody thinks they're an expert on everything. Um, and everybody has an opinion on everything. And if you don't have an opinion on something, then there's something wrong with you. What is your opinion on it? And people need to know, right? Whether that's COVID, whether that's racism, whether that's LGBTQ, whether that's politics, whether that's women's rights. I mean, all kinds of things. You could just go down the rabbit hole of all the different uh, things that divide us in this country and in our world. And I don't shy away from those topics. I don't shy away from those conversations. But I think you have to start from a place of love for sure. And not just in your words, but truly, honestly loving the people that you're talking about. If you're going to have a conversation about abortion, you better make sure that you don't just talk about, hey, we love and want to protect the unborn. But man, we love and protect uh, the 14-year-old girl that got raped by a family member and now is pregnant. Like, that's messy. That's hard. How do we deal with that? Right? Like, what do we do?
mhm.
Uh, a parent that has a child that comes out as gay or lesbian or trans or whatever it might be. Um, Many times churches will focus on the issue and they're not thinking about the child, they're not thinking about the parents and what they're dealing with. And so while we have biblical truth for a lot of these things, and I know a lot of people have different ways that they think about all of these different issues, um, but yet I don't ever want to shy away from what we believe is true, but it's all about speaking the truth in love. Many people just want to speak the truth and they just want to speak it in the most blunt way possible. And that's why Christians get a bad rap a lot of times, is because they think that we're just haters and we can't stand people that are gay. We want to kick them out of all of our churches or whatever. And it's like, no, 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 that's not the case. We believe God has so much in store for all of these people. Man, we're all people that have fallen short. We're all messed up in some way or another. We've all done things that are good and bad and ugly. Me in my life personally, I've done a lot of things. And so, listen, I am never, ever, ever going to judge somebody for where they're at right now. Right? Like, I'm never going to judge somebody because I realize that I am a sinner that is saved by grace. And so, man, I always want to lead with love because I don't deserve the grace of God just as much as anybody else in this world. And so, leading with love is so important. And yet, talking about biblical truth is so important too. So, how do you actually put that into a sermon? That's where it gets really tough. And you want to make sure that you are careful about the way that you say things. You don't want to intentionally go out and offend people, but you also don't want to tickle their ears and just say everything that people want you to say. Um, Real love is being truthful and honest with people. I know that doesn't sit well with a lot of people in our culture now, but as a parent, I'm never going to lie to my child and say that that's being loving. I'm not going to do that. I need to tell them the truth. I need to train them up in the right way of living. And so, as a parent, I want to make sure that I'm being honest with my kids. I want to be, as a pastor, honest with my congregation as well. Hey, this is what the Bible says about this, but man, let's wrestle with this together. Let's unpack this. Let's have conversations. And man, sometimes there's some one-on-one conversations that need to happen. And I think that that is a beautiful thing. So many of the people that started with us at our church, there's a guy from the very beginning disagrees with me on just about everything there is to disagree with me about. When it comes to all of these hot button issues, we're kind of different in a lot of areas. And yet he decided to be on our launch team and to help us start the church, him and his family. I asked him, I said, man, well, why are you on this team? Why are you saying yes to being on the team when we definitely have some differences of opinion in our politics and think ways that we view these different hot button issues? And he said, man, you know, I can just tell that you actually love people. Yeah, we disagree on a few of these things, but I can just tell that this is a place that's going to love people well, regardless of what they believe and what they think. And I said, you're exactly right. That is exactly it. So I'm grateful that you're on the team. Come on, man, let's do this. And they've been with us for 3 years now, ever since the beginning of the church. So, and have been some of our best volunteers, if I could be totally honest with you. Great friends. Just talked to them the other day. So, man, you can live life with people that don't think the same way that you do on things. It is possible, as much as people think it's not nowadays. So, yeah, that's kind of how I would talk about that.
Yeah, and I think also a lot of Christians, or at least the ones that are really outspoken, um, tend to forget that we're human as well, and we
Yes.
can't change the person. Only
Yeah.
God can. Like, it's not our job to preach, 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 and like point everything out. Like, only God, like they can come in whatever situation they're in, and as long as we're loving them well, like God could use that to soften their heart and start to change them, because we don't have the power to do that.
Absolutely. And it's anything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the church will hate on LGBTQ, but then they're really light on divorce and adultery. It's like, no,
Or
that's not how that works. you know?
yeah, or even honestly, like I've had a few conversations too where churches won't really talk about it, but it's in the Bible that gluttony is a sin.
Come on.
And you don't ever hear like a pastor talking about that. Like,
Yeah,
it's, I just feel like they, a lot of them, or just some, a few, tend to choose certain things and then just focus on that without really going through the whole spectrum.
sure. And I understand there's a reason for that somewhat in that they're going to talk about the things that are relevant in our culture, that they're going to talk about the questions that people are asking,
Yeah.
right? So I understand that side of it, where maybe people that don't go to church or are not Christians, maybe somebody that might be listening to this is like, well, yeah, that's all that I ever hear the church talking about. Well, it's like, well, that's because it's all you ever hear anyone talking about. Like, it's not just the church,
Um,
it's just the world is talking about this. The NCAA is talking about this, and trans athletes coming in, and women's rights, and like they're like, what does that look like? It's the world talking about it, and then we're trying to filter that through this conversation of, okay, what does that look like, in filtering it through Scripture, and then let's present it to our church. Many times, I think churches go wrong when they just completely focus on those things, though, because I'm like, man, I never want to be talking about that if I'm not talking about pride, if I'm not talking about anger, if I'm not talking about, the fruit of the spirit, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's have some self-control, people. We're going to talk about, uh, this other stuff, but let's talk about also, people that are living together that aren't married, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, how
mhm.
are we going to ignore that? And it gets ignored many times. And then we'll talk about this other thing so much. I can understand why people outside of the church would say, well, you guys are hypocrites. Like, this is all you care about. This is all you're talking about. You're just hating on people. You're hating on this people group, even. And so we never want to be like that. We want the Bible says we're supposed to preach the whole counsel of God's word. We're supposed to preach all of it. It's hard to get through all of it. There's a whole bunch of content there. It's a massive book, and it's real deep. And we could preach about it for thousands of years, as we have. But man, let's give people a healthy diet of God's word, right? That's what I want to try to do.
Yeah. So this actually kind of leads into another question that I had. Why do you think, or do you think that so many young people are leaving the church?
Mm, that's a tough one. I think part of it is what we talked about a minute ago, is the individualistic society that we live in. I think being a young person today is much harder than it has been in the past. Social media amplifies a lot of things nowadays. It amplifies even anxiety. It's amplifying depression. It's amplifying this trying to achieve these unrealistic goals from these people that they see on Instagram and their lives and everything. It's crazy. And then they're also being bombarded by culture. They're being bombarded by lies from this world, that money and girls and guys and success, the right job, if you hustle, you get the, you want to be an influencer, right? Like you be an influencer, and if you have a huge podcast, then that's going to be like it for you. You know what I'm saying? Like if you, and so they get bombarded with all these lies. They're seeing Instagram, bikini models and stuff. The guys are just like buying into all of this. The girls are buying into all this stuff. And we're in this world where we feel like we can Google something and, Chat GPT is going to give us the answer to life. And it's just not how it works. They're buying into the lie of the enemy. And so I do think that there is a whole lot to say about young people leaving the church. I think it's our fault, if I can say that. It's my generation and older, because of the way that we have treated some of these issues, because of the way that we have treated some of the political division, the way that 2020 and COVID was handled by a lot of churches and a lot of people. And that's a tough thing. I'm not saying, hey, one way's right or wrong. What I'm saying is many churches and many pastors and many leaders did not handle it from a place of love and of care and of grace for people and of understanding for different viewpoints. They dug their heels into one side of the game and completely neglected a whole other 50% of the people that were in their church and are in their city. And so that gets real tough. I think there's a whole lot of young people that are all about causes. They're all about stepping up, and they want authentic experiences. That's one thing I've noticed a lot recently. People are moving away from the attractional church model, which is basically saying like, hey, let's get you into the church with a bunch of cool lights and music and haze and everything. And there's nothing wrong with that. We do all those things. But it's not the main thing. It's not what we care about the most. Like we're giving away AirPods on Sunday for our church's 3-year birthday, right? But there's churches that will literally put everything into that basket, where it's like every other week, there's some kind of gimmick to get people to the church. There's some kind of flashy thing that they're doing to try to get people to show up. And young people today are just saying, yeah, I just want a real relationship with somebody. You know what I mean? Like, I just want authenticity. I don't need you to stand up there and give me a TED talk for 20 minutes to tickle my ears and make me feel good. Like, I want to talk about the stuff that matters. I want to talk about meaningful things. And if we can have some meaningful conversations and meaningful, deep community with one another, I think that's what's going to get, Gen Z back into the church. And also just reaching them where they're at. I think churches are doing a terrible job of reaching people online, reaching people on TikTok. I don't know a whole lot of churches that are doing that well, but that's where they're at. They're on Snap, they're on TikTok, they're not on Facebook anymore. And yet we're using 10-year-old tactics. My marketer's coming out a little bit, but we're using 10-year-old tactics to reach the next generation that has completely moved on from those platforms. And so, man, you got to go to where people are. Go to the universities, go to TikTok, go to Snap, however you got to get to those people, man, get to them, and then give them something real. I think that's what people care about now.
Yeah. And as a pastor, what advice would you give to other pastors who might not know a lot about marketing and stuff, and maybe it doesn't even have to be marketing, but who are kind of stuck in the four walls of the church?
Yeah.
What advice would you give them to go out and reach? I mean, I know it's really simple, but
Sure.
what advice would you give to people who just don't know what to do?
Yeah. I mean, some marketing is simple, some of it's pretty complex, but I think marketing today is a lot easier than it used to be. 7, 8 years ago, you had to have a high quality professional camera and a film crew in order to put out a perfect video. You had to have the newest Canon camera to take your photos to make sure that your feed looked aesthetically pleasing. And now people just don't care about those things. Like I said, TikTok is really what changed it. I think that's a whole generation of people. They just care about authenticity, just being yourself. Just laugh at yourself. Just be normal. You don't got to be this like perfectly polished person. The behind the scenes stuff is what people actually really like now. And that's what I think that we need to prioritize. And as a church, that is so, like, we are both filming this on our iPhones right now. I think you
Mhm.
have an iPhone. I hope you
Yeah.
do. Do you? Okay, you're not a sinner. Okay, so, but we're filming this right now on our iPhones. We don't have some fancy camera set up. We got a $100 ring light for each of us and an iPhone. That's all you need to get started reaching people online. You just need to have a conversation, ask a question, post a clip from your sermon. Just like Gary Vee talks about this all the time. You don't even have to worry about creating content. Your life is your content. Just film everything. Just film stuff that you're doing around the office. Film stuff that you're doing at the gym, like you do. Come on now, film your workouts. Film if you're a musician. Film rehearsal and post something with some text over it that says like, hey, this is what, a cool thing that happened during rehearsal. Just people want to see what you're doing during your life. And so for churches and pastors, man, just get online and start a conversation with somebody. Don't worry about the haters. My wife gets so nervous about the haters on TikTok. I'll post a video sometimes and she's like, these people are so angry at you. And I am just laughing because it does not affect me at all. Like there's going to be haters. That's why a lot of people don't get on TikTok because I think it's just so toxic. We can't be on a platform that's that toxic. Well, let's bring some positivity to it then. Come on, man. Like if it's so toxic, then change the culture. You be the light in the dark place. You be the one that changes it. That's what I would like to do. So, yeah, I'm going to have some good conversations on TikTok with people, and I'm not worried if they hate on me, if they love me. I'm just going to do what God's called me to do, and love people the best way that I can. And hopefully it encourages somebody along the way.
Yeah. Why do you think, because I kind of came across this, um, why do you think churches are like scared or nervous or just don't want to even interact on any other platform than like Facebook and barely on Instagram? When in reality, we know maybe it's because we kind of both are creative, me and you, so it's more at the forefront, but we know that's where people are going and that's what people look at. Like, for example, when I was looking for a church in Texas, I searched on Google, but then I also kind of looked at their social media.
Right.
So, and I think me and you had like kind of talked about this. Like, I think your social media is what made me go to your church first and
Yeah.
foremost. Um, which that kind of stinks that we look at that, but it lets me see what your church is and who kind of gives me an inside look at to who you are as the leader of the church and you
Right.
know so why do you think it's so easy to do that? Most people or a lot of churches are kind of stuck in the mindset of not, but just being stuck.
Yeah. I think people don't like change. Let's be honest. They don't like change. We've done it this way for the last 5 years. So why would we change? Also, social media just changes so fast. It's hard to keep up. It really is. I think every church needs a good creative person on their staff or at least in a volunteer capacity, and they just need to turn the reins over to. But they think it has to be polished. They think it has to be perfect. No, dude, give an iPhone to an 18-year-old high school or college student and tell them to start taking some photos during service and post them. You know what I mean? Like just start
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. Don't be nervous about the change, but man, you gotta learn. You gotta start somewhere. Um, and people are hesitant about TikTok because they think, it's just this awful cesspool, and in some respects, it is, right? It can be a very discouraging and dark platform at times,
But it
but
also depends on your algorithm of what you're looking at as the user. So if you're always looking at like Okay, so for example, I'm kind of
Yeah.
caught up in like two things right now. I'm caught up in the eight passengers situation, and I'm
Yes.
caught up in like the Ashton Kutcher situation.
Yeah.
So obviously, right now, my TikTok is a lot of that because it knows that's what I'm watching. But your TikTok algorithm will adjust to what you watch.
Right. Exactly. And that's why sometimes when I hear, some older pastors talking about every time I get on TikTok, all I see is girls shaking their booties. I'm like, oh, what does that say about you, my man? At the very beginning, that's what it shows you. I remember that. Like when I
Yeah.
first got on TikTok in 2020, I was like, oh Lord, like we gotta get through some of this and not interested, not interested, not interested. And then like and comment on all of the pastor stuff that I could find and church stuff and family stuff that I could find. It took a few days and my algorithm was different. And but that's funny, the eight passengers thing. I've been seeing a lot of that stuff too. There's some trends, of course we see a lot, but I agree with you. It's about the algorithm, but breaking in to different niches, breaking into different people's algorithms, and just putting in that little bit of hope, where maybe they're just scrolling and all. Let's be real. There's a college dude, and all he's doing is just scrolling, and it's girl after girl after girl, doing some TikTok dance, out at
Oh,
the beach, like what's up?
you're
Oh, is it good now?
you're breaking up.
Okay, let me start again. Okay.
No. Okay, yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Are we good? Yes, maybe? Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's getting there.
Okay. Well, let me start again. I'll just go back. So, maybe there's a guy, let's be real, on TikTok that's scrolling and it's just girl after girl after girl after girl. It's TikTok dance, it's at the beach, it's influencer models and stuff like that. And then he comes across another video of a pastor or a church saying something about hope, giving something that this guy can latch onto. It might just be a tiny second in time. Maybe he won't think anything of it, but maybe someone will, you know? Maybe someone will stop. Have a message on anxiety, message on depression, or a message on, uh, man, about to do a message in November about pornography and how terrible it can be for you and for your mind, for your marriage, for who you are. Now imagine some college dude coming across that as he's seeing all these TikTok girls, you know what I'm saying? And then he's like, yo, maybe that plants a seed in that guy's life that maybe one day will lead to something else. So that's what I would encourage pastors to do is don't be afraid of the platforms. Don't be if you don't understand them, that's fine. If your pastor doesn't understand marketing, you don't need to understand marketing and social media. Just find somebody that does, usually a high schooler or a college kid. Just make sure they have good character and turn it over to them. And if they ask you to film a video, just do whatever they say. If they put some random cat video on your TikTok and you don't understand it, well, it's because you don't understand it and it might get a million views. You know what I mean? So, like, don't be nervous, but just the creatives many times are younger. You got to empower the next generation to do what they know how to do best and not to get on TikTok and make a difference. So there you go.
That was really good. Have some now we can kind of do you have anything else to say before we dive into like harder questions?
Oh no, go for it. I want to hear
Okay.
them.
Okay, so um would your wife ever say that you have or that she felt that you have placed her or placed ministry above her? And if
Yes,
so, how did you guys handle that?
absolutely. I'm pretty sure it was yesterday. You know what I'm saying? Like that happens a whole lot with pastors and with leaders. I'll be honest, it's tough. It really, really is. Today, as a matter of fact, she didn't say that yesterday, but we do talk about that quite often. I'm just making sure that we're like balancing that well because today is my day off. It's Friday. It's usually I take Fridays and Saturdays off because I work Sunday through Thursday. I try to take Fridays and Saturdays. So today was my day off and went to the library with the kids and hung out with them so she could talk to another mom friend of hers from the church. Went to Chick-fil-A with them, helped to watch the kids there, had a blast. Um, Came back, hung out with Lindsay while the kids were asleep, helped get the kids to sleep, hung out with her for a little bit. She went off to have a mom's night with some moms from his school, his Christian school he goes to. They went out to dinner, and I was hanging out with the kids, watching Encanto, having a good time, right? So that kind of a day right there is so, so important. It's just incredibly important. And as pastors, we don't always get those. We don't always get those days because somebody calls and now there's an emergency and something's got to be done. Um, Somebody got in a fight with somebody else, has in an argument, and now you got to be the mediator between these two people. Or somebody got in an accident, now I got to go to the hospital, and you're there for 3 or 4 hours. Somebody calls, and it's a 2 hour conversation because it's some, you know what I mean? Like that stuff just happens. Not often um, that we get those days, but protecting that time and making sure that we have those set times. It's like, hey, this is family day and ain't nothing gonna mess with this day. And we're working on that. It's tough. I'll be honest. Our church has grown a whole lot over the last 6 months. We were about 120 people 6 months ago, and now we're 300 plus. And so with that, it's brought a lot of challenges because there's so many new people. Every new person that comes wants to talk with a pastor, wants to meet with the pastor. So it's setting up different systems in place and letting the body of Christ, letting other people minister to other people as well, realizing that I can't be everything to everybody. I can't meet with every single person that wants to meet. I can't get on the phone with every single person that comes to the church. I can't be best friends with everybody. We can't have all of you over to dinner as much as we would love. It's just not possible. And so learning those boundaries, learning what's healthy, getting in a good rhythm, for sure. And it is tough because on Sunday mornings, especially, I'm busy, and she's got the kids and is trying to wrangle them together while I'm talking with people and doing the whole thing that pastors have to do. And so finding a way to, even my mom comes to the church every once in a while, she'll just, she'll help watch the kids. So Lindsay can actually, talk to people and go to church for once, and so those are kinds of things that we have to put in place. And as pastors, we have to be careful because our family is our first ministry. They really are our first priority, and they're my first priority. I absolutely adore my family. I love my wife and I love my kids, and I want to spend a whole lot of time with them. And I certainly don't want the church, when I look back 10 years from now, I don't want to say, man, all I was doing was the church. And yes, it's a grind. Yes, it's busy. Basically, we started a small business is what we did. Any small business owner knows how difficult it is when you started your small business. And every small business owner knows 10 years from then, either they started to hire people and to work through volunteers and work through their employees, or they are still stuck working themselves into the ground. It's a book called The E-Myth, The E-Myth Revisited. And it talks about, I'm forgetting the author right now, but it's an incredible book. And I'd encourage every entrepreneur, every leader to read it. And it's the entrepreneurial myth. And there's a part in it that talks about, plumbers that think that they can go out and start a plumbing business. And yet, what have they really done? Many times, plumbing businesses have one employee. And who is it? The plumber. And why is that? Well, it's because they were a plumber under somebody else. And they thought, you know what? I'm a pretty darn good plumber. I could do this myself. They go out and start a plumbing business. The problem is many people that are masters of their craft are not masters of business, are not masters of organizational skills. And they're a great plumber, but they have no business leading and managing a plumbing business. There's two completely different skill sets, right? And so what ends up happening is they didn't create a business. They just created a job for themselves. And so now they just created a really hard job at that. And so for the next 10 years, they're beating themselves into the ground. They're not really making any more money that they could have been making somewhere else, yet they feel stuck because they have not learned how to empower other people and to get the good systems in place, to find good boundaries for their life, to where they can invest in their family and in their hobbies and things they want to do. So The E-Myth Revisited, it's a great book. Don't create a job for yourself. If you're going to create a business, if you're going to start a church, if you're going to start anything, have the mindset, have the goal that you're not just going to be the one doing everything forever. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of grind at the beginning, and that's okay. That's normal. But it shouldn't be like that forever. And if it is, you got to revisit what's going on. So,
Yeah. There's two things in there that I want to touch on.
sure.
So there's like this stigma around pastors' kids. So do you think, because you had mentioned like, you want to spend as much time as you can with your family and you don't want to look down 10 years from now and be like, all I did was spend time at the church. Do you
Right.
think the um not all pastors' kids, but a lot of pastors' kids that I've known have grown to like be kind of bitter towards the church? And do you think that coincides with, their dad or their parents who are really involved in the church, really putting the church here and then them here, and then that's why they become bitter?
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I think I want to involve my son and my daughter in my ministry as much as I can, especially as they get older. They're 4 and they're 1 right now, but I want to make sure that they enjoy being at the church. That's one
How would
thing that
you?
I want to make that they are happy to be there. I never want to say on Saturday night when we're putting the kids to sleep, hey, guys, you got to get in bed because we have to go to church tomorrow. Well, no, we don't have to go to church. We get to go to church tomorrow. Like, are you excited to see your friends at church tomorrow? Yeah, daddy, I'm so pumped. That's awesome. As they get older, I want to make sure that we prioritize church because if we don't prioritize church, our kids are not going to prioritize church, right? But if we prioritize church over our kids, then our kids are going to prioritize other things over us in the church because they haven't felt loved. They have understood that we come second. And so that's really tough. It is. And especially as they get older, like if I go on a ministry trip and everything, once my son gets a little bit older, I'm going to take him with me. Get a chance to hang out with dad, just me and him time. Same thing with Tegan when she gets older. I want to make sure I can take her on trips with me, take the kids, take my family. If we go on to a conference or something like that, man, let's stay a few more days afterwards and go explore the town. Not just be about the church side of things, but let's tack on a family vacation because hey, it's already paid for. We might as well go, right? So those are some things that we're thinking about, things that I think will help. Now, I was not a pastor's kid, so I can't speak to that personally. But from pastors' kids that I know, a lot of them did go away from church or do, have problems with their parents. But a lot of pastors' kids I know too love the church and they became pastors themselves. And so that's what I would hope for my kids is that they see that we care about them first and foremost, and we involve them in the process of things, and then we don't, we're not always at the church. I think that's the other thing too is if you're at the church 3 or 4 nights a week, that's too much. Yeah, as a business owner or an entrepreneur, if you're working 12-hour days, 4 or 5 days a week, your kid's not gonna your kid's going to resent the business. They're going to resent everything that you do. And you don't want that. And so as a pastor, I want to make sure that, yeah, like today, we were hanging out with some people from the church at the library. And he got to hang out with some of his friends because the mom brought her kids around the same age. So it doesn't feel like ministry to them when really we're just hanging out with people in the church and we're loving on people, but it's just life. And my kids are getting to hang out with other kids too, having an absolute blast. I hope they don't turn into spoiled brats. That's the thing I'm the most nervous about. I don't want that to happen, but hopefully we will instill some good qualities in them so that won't happen. But
Yeah. And how do you prioritize your marriage? Because I know you're both busy. I'm not sure if she's a stay-at-home mom or if she
yes,
is. So she's busy all day with two
yeah,
kids, and then you're busy with your church. How do you guys prioritize keeping each other, like obviously God and then your marriage and then your kids, but how do you prioritize that with being so busy, especially with young kids and a young church?
yeah. So luckily, being the pastor, every once in a while I can take off just whenever I feel like it because that's just the way it rolls, right? So uh, when you're the head guy, you can just kind of say, you know what, I'm taking a 3 hour lunch today. So every once in a while, I do that. That always helps. Just like, hey, you know what? Let's just go to Austin. Let's go hang out. And it's just a surprise. That's really fun. A day like today was really helpful. Um, just a day where I get to support her in something that she wants to do. And then there's times where she's at home with the kids and I'm out. Like tomorrow morning, we're doing a Chi Alpha golf tournament. Chi Alpha is a campus organization for missions. So Texas State, it's basically it's a bunch of Texas State students that love Jesus. They get together, and these are missionaries that are actually full-time missionaries on campus. There's many different organizations. I know Crew and lots of different organizations that do that. Chi Alpha is a great one. We support them. So I'm going to a golf tournament tomorrow morning with some guys from the church. Lindsay will be at home with the kids, right? So we have the things that we like to do, and we support each other. Stay at home, watch the kids, things like that. She does more of it than I do. I'll be honest, but that is because I do like to get out a whole lot. That's kind of my natural personality. Lindsay would love to stay at the house and watch some reality TV and just chill. You know what I mean? So she likes that life too. But um, with young kids, it's really tough. I will say that has been really hard. Starting the church or starting a business when you have young kids, it's just going to be hard. There's no way around it. Especially, if your wife's staying at home or maybe she has a job too. I mean, man, that makes a whole nother level of difficulty. And so there's that time period where you get home from work, right? You guys get home and you're watching the kids together. You're splitting the bath time duties, the dinner duties. You're hanging out, sit at the table and eat together. I mean, that's an easy one. Like guys, I know guys a lot of times are extra driven. They're not getting home before dinner time. They're eating, cold dinner, an hour after it's already been made and the kids are already getting in bed. If you have the ability to get home, like there is no reason that that thing that you're working on cannot wait until tomorrow. And if it's an absolute priority and you cannot put it off until tomorrow, well, then you probably needed to figure out your priorities the whole week so where you could go home at 5 o'clock. Um, I know sometimes there's going to be long hours as an entrepreneur. There's going to be long times as a business owner, as a pastor, but finding those rhythms and seasons of that, understanding that you and your spouse understanding, hey, Easter is coming up. I'm going to be busy. Like the next 2 weeks before Easter is always crazy. But then after Easter is over, man, let's get away for a couple of days. Let's plan a vacation, something like that. Thanksgiving and Christmas, we actually take a whole lot of time off. We take about a week off during Thanksgiving. And then this year we're having no service on Christmas Eve. Sunday is Christmas Eve this year. We're not having church. Why is that? Because the marriages, my marriage with my wife and the marriages of our staff and our volunteers and their families are more important than us all trying to get people to come to church on Christmas Eve when they're just trying to hang out with their families. Like you can love Jesus and be opening presents under the tree and hanging out with your family all at the same time. Like if we're not there for one Sunday, the world's not going to crash and burn. And then we take that whole week after Christmas off, and then we come back at the beginning of the year. So that's a really healthy thing, I think, to do for churches and for business owners and entrepreneurs. Man, you just got to find those seasons of growth. You got to find the seasons of rest. That's a biblical thing, and that is a business thing. So you got to find that for yourself.
Okay. Now come the hard questions.
Oh, shoot. Let's go.
So the first question I want to ask, because I think this would be good for us, like me, as the congregation or someone involved in church. I know there's a lot of pastors lately that I've kind of been seeing who are struggling a lot with mental health, feeling alone, feeling like they really don't have a safe anywhere to go, anyone to talk to, because they always feel like they have to be on for their church.
Mm-hmm.
How, as a congregation, one, can we support the pastor, and two, how can pastors support each other in that? Because I also feel like, um, yes, there's so many churches around, but and I could be wrong because obviously I'm not a pastor. I'm not in that like niche, but I feel like churches are separate.
Yeah.
Like instead of being the body of Christ, yeah, there's different buildings, but instead, I don't want to call it a network, but like
Right.
having that, um, yeah, that's a two-parter. How can we as a congregation help? And do you think it would be beneficial for churches and pastors and leaders to put aside the four walls of the church and the open-handed issues, and just come together?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. As far as church members supporting the pastors, first thing I would say is pray for your pastor. Whoever your pastor is, pray for them because they need prayer. There is power in prayer. We believe that. And we believe that uh, if I'm covered in prayer by my people, number one, there's power in what God can do. And also, it's hard to be mad at somebody that you're praying for. It's just real hard. If you're praying for somebody, honestly praying for them, your spouse, a friend, your pastor, it's hard to be upset at them about things. And so pray for them and ask for God's wisdom, ask for his strength, ask how you can be a part of the solution to the problems that you may see even in the church. And then from there, be a part of the solution. Like if you feel like God tells you to do something, or ask your pastor, how can I serve? Where do you see me fitting in this church the best? Is there a hole in the church of ministry that you feel like that I could help fill? Is there an area that I could be of service to you personally, to your family, or to the ministry? Just get involved, like be around, get in proximity with your pastor as best you can, or with the pastor of your ministry that you serve under, or whatever it might be. God has given you gifts and talents that you can use for the kingdom. When you were at our church, you were gifted in creativity, gifted in photography, and many of our photos on our Instagram that you loved so much that made you want to come to the church. Many of our photos were taken by you because you stepped up and said, "Hey, I want to get involved. I want to help. I want to serve. What can I do?" And you picked up a camera and went with it. And so if everybody in every church had that same mentality, oh my goodness, could you imagine how we could serve one another, how much more we could do for our communities, how much more, not just for the church community, but for the community at large, how much we could serve? I think it'd be a beautiful thing. And so that's the best way to support us, is to pray for us, ask how we can help be a part of the solution, and then just jump in, find something and make it happen. And obviously like give to your church, be generous to your church with your finances and with your time. Because honestly, that being real, that's what supports your pastor and his family. That's where they get their lifeline from. And, the church is 501c3 nonprofit, right? Like all of our funds, for the most part anyway, for most churches, come from tithes and offerings from people that have bought into the vision and bought into the pastor and his family and what they're trying to do in the community and in their church. So be generous and know that you're not just supporting the church, you're not just supporting the community and what God is doing, but you're also helping that family. You're helping those pastors' kids, right? You know what I mean? By giving and by being generous as well. So then how can pastors support each other? I think that's really important because we are so divided many times over just small, dumb things. And there's primary theological issues, there's secondary theological issues, and then there's a bunch of other stuff too. But there's some kind of primary and secondary. And a lot of times we get caught up on the secondary things. The primary, I understand, right? If there is just an absolute massive gap between the two churches in the way, for a Church of Christ church, for example, we'd have a hard time partnering with them to do, let's say, a worship night, right? Because they don't do instruments in music and we do, right? So that's going to be kind of a hard sell. A Lutheran church is probably going to have a hard time partnering with us on some certain things. But man, maybe we could partner with them on a food drive, because that has nothing to do that's at that point, those theological differences can be put aside for the good of the community around us, right? Like, we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. We have some different viewpoints on these things, but can we put those aside for this project? Absolutely, we could do that. And so there's many other secondary issues. So let's just get together. I think many times we don't get together because we're prideful, also because we're insecure. It does become this competition. We get territorial. We don't want the new guy coming into town. We don't want, I was the new guy at one point, right? And there's new guys that are coming in now. I met with one recently who's about to plant a church, and I'm stoked for him. I'm like, dude, yes, like, let's go. We need you. We need another great church in this town. We need your voice in this city. You're going to reach people that I am never going to reach. Your church is going to be able to do things, and your church is going to have a focus on, let's say their focus has a huge emphasis on feeding the homeless. Well, maybe that's not something maybe that we do, or another church down the corner. They're really, really invested in helping women that have, teen pregnancies or something like that. Man, go for it. That's amazing. So right now we're actually partnering with a group called Young Lives, and they're going to come in and use our building. And it's Young Life, but then Young Lives is like the sub thing under that. And they reach out to teen moms and dads, and they have kind of like a Bible study for them, and they bring them food. And so that's something that we are doing that maybe another church down the street is not passionate about, or they're doing something else that's great, right? So we all need each other. All of our churches, just like the body of Christ within your church, there are many different people with many different gifts, and we will preach that all day long. There's many people in this church with gifts. We want you to use the gifts and talents you have for the glory of God. Come on, why don't you serve? Let's all work together as the body of Christ. And yet, when it comes to the churches, this church has a unique gift and talent. This church has unique gifts and talents and emphasis that God has placed on them. This church is doing something else. This church is doing something else. So ain't no reason why we cannot all come together and be the capital C church to bless our community. So a lot of times it's pride, a lot of times it's territorial, a lot of times, more often than not, it's insecurity. But getting together in groups, finding your tribe. You're not going to be best friends with everybody. That's just life. You're not going to be best friends with every pastor in your community. That's cool. But you need to be friends with a couple of them, right? You just need to know there's a couple of churches that we can work with that are always going to have our back. We're going to have their back. We're gonna never talk bad about anybody. That's another thing too. Don't talk trash about the church around the corner. Just don't do it, whether they did something awful to you or not. Now there's some people that you could probably trust in your close circle, your very close circle, and your family, maybe a few very, very close friends that you trust. That, yeah, if something happened to you from another pastor, whatever, you can talk to them about that in confidence. But overall, for the most part, man, let's not tear each other down. Let's build each other up, because we're all on the same team. For the most part, trying to do the same thing. Love people well, care for people well. We have different methods, but the message is the same. And that's that Jesus brings hope and life to people. So let's work together the best we can.
Yeah, it's so simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so simple.
It should be.
And just the fact that, because I was thinking the exact same thing when you were talking about the body of Christ inside the church, that we all have different gifts, we're all different parts, we need to use those and go out. But it's also the bigger picture. Like, there's so many different churches that have different gifts, different passions, and then you can come together there and really be the full body of Christ.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me that it doesn't happen as often. I know it happens, obviously. It does, but it's interesting that it's rare to find.
I'll tell you this. We had a group in San Antonio I got invited to. That same pastor, Pastor Ed of Community Bible Church, brought together about 10 to 15 pastors from all around San Antonio. I was the farthest one away, but it's because I used to work in San Antonio. I knew a lot of the guys. But there's a lot of guys that I didn't know. And he brought us all together, and he said, man, I just want us to get together do life together for the next few months. Let's lock in on some leadership stuff together. Let's learn together. Let's talk about the struggles of being lead pastors together. Um, and man, it was powerful. It was so, so powerful. The chains that were just broken off of people. The conversations we had were just so real and raw. And it's like if every pastor would have that, I think we wouldn't feel so alone, but it takes somebody's got to start it. I think that's really the thing. Somebody has to say, hey, I don't like what I'm seeing here. I don't like this territorial crap. I don't like this, we don't talk to each other thing. And I understand you're busy. We're all busy. And, especially entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, pastors, we're very busy and a lot of things that we got going on. And so we can't hang out with everybody, but hang out with your top leaders, invest in your staff, um, invest in a few key people in your church that bring you joy and that lift you up, and invest in your family, and then invest in a few relationships with pastors around you. Really, if you can keep it to about 20 people, 20 to 30 people in that range, you can manage that. If you have 10 staff members, right now, I think we have 8. You have your family, you have those key leaders in your church. Maybe they're not staff, but you're developing people. And then a few people that just outside of the church that just bring you joy, just your friends. Maybe they don't go to your church, but they're just the people you grew up with or the people that you love. And then those other pastors in your community and around you. Yeah, you can manage those relationships. You don't have to be friends with everybody, but just find a few people that love you and that will lift you up and go all in with those people. And I think if every pastor could just make that choice to say, you know what, I'm going to add a few of those pastors, and just one meeting a month, even, let's just get together once a month, get some breakfast on a Saturday morning. Let's do that. I think that's a powerful thing. So.
Yeah, and I think sorry, I had to change my mic.
You're good.
I also think that I don't know why this is such we're focusing on this right now, but I also feel like if the people who don't go to church or who aren't Christian can see churches coming together and maybe doing like a worship night once a
Yeah.
quarter, or coming together as the body of Christ. Like, okay, yeah, you're from over here, you're from over there. They all come together, they all break bread, they all do something. It's an event. But just for people outside of the church to see the church actually being united like that, I think that would speak volumes as well.
Yeah. And even a lot of times people come to our church and they'll come to whatever church. And the first thing they want to do is tell you why they're there. And it's because we were at this church for a while, and Pastor so and so, we just didn't really like where things were going there, and blah, 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 blah. You're like, oh, Pastor so and so, I know him. That's cool. We get lunch together once a month with a bunch of other pastors. Awesome dude. Guy. You should see the look on their faces. It is hilarious. They're like, it stops them right in their tracks. It's hard to talk trash about somebody that the pastor that I know personally. And I'm like, hey, I know that guy. Dude, solid guy, the great church over there. It shuts up that negativity immediately.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, no, that's true too. Because then you won't be able to keep like the negativity in your own church too. Because that is true. I mean, I think we've all been guilty of it where we'll leave somewhere because we were hurt or something, and then we just want to vent it out. But we wouldn't really vent it out if you knew, oh, you know them, you like them. Oh, maybe I misunderstood. Or it could even be that, like I misunderstood them or.
Well, and hey, here's the deal. I have no problem with people telling me about their church hurt. I have no problem with that. In fact, I welcome that. But a lot of times, usually the people that are doing that, what I just said, if they walk in to the church and the first thing they say to me is how they were hurt and the pastor did this or whatever, I don't believe you. I'm sorry. I just don't. Like the people that I know that have really been hurt and that are just good people, though, that are just upset about it. That's not what they lead with. they usually come in and they say, yeah, like, we went to this church for a while and we're just kind of looking for a home church now. And then you'll find out after talking with them for a little while, maybe about a month or two later, they'll open up and say, yeah, actually, we had some stuff that happened there. It really sucked. But man, I'm really sorry to hear that. It's tough. I know it's hard. A lot of misunderstandings, or pastors hurt people sometimes. It just is what it is. Or church leaders or other members will hurt other people, and I'm really sorry that happened. I don't need to know any details or anything like that, but I just that stinks. And then a few months later, you'll be sitting with them again, and they'll say, hey, pastor, would you mind, I feel like we've gotten to know each other, would you mind if I tell you my story? Would you mind if I tell you what happened? I really need to talk to somebody about it. I want to work through it. And I trust you. You've been my pastor for a few months now. I feel like we have a relationship where we can talk about this. Or sometimes I will even ask. Many times I try not to. I try not to ask people. If I can tell that they have been hurt, or if they have something that was there with their old church, a lot of times what I will say right off the bat is, hey, they'll start talking about the old church right off the bat when they start coming. And I'll say, hey, listen, hey, I'm going to stop you right there. Listen, right now, I don't need to know about all that. I'm just glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. We're going to love you. We're going to help you get through whatever it is that you've gone through. There will be a time we can talk about it. I promise, because I care about what you went through. But for now, man, I don't need to know. I'm just glad you're here. Thank you so much. And that'll kind of disarm them for a little bit and say, you know what? Yeah, like you're right. Like I don't need to worry about that right now. Like he's just happy I'm here. I can trust this guy. And then a few months later, we'll talk about it for sure. I don't want it to be the
So, like,
first thing I lead with, usually anyway. So
so basically, like, in a few months, like you said, there's a healing process that maybe they're ready for.
yes, yes. Well, and I think a lot of it
That's
is
what you want to focus on.
I need. Well, I need to know, for me, even personally, if I play into that, then I am hurting them. I'm also hurting that other ministry, because this is what happens, dude. If I play into somebody that comes for the first time and they want to talk trash about their old church, and I play into it and I listen to that, and I'm like, man, I'm really sorry they did that. I'm really sorry they hurt you in that way. And then maybe they never come back. Well, then what happens?
Mm.
Their only experience with me is me validating their anger and their hurt, and they could go back and say something to that pastor or somebody else or to whatever. I don't know. But I mean, I think it takes time to heal and takes time to process. And it's like on a first date. The first thing that you're not going to come out and start talking about your ex-girlfriend on your first date. No, that's weird. And if you did, then the person you're sitting across from is going to feel real uncomfortable, right?
The red
Uh,
flag.
right. So as a pastor, it's the same way. If you walk in and the first thing you start doing is talking about your old pastor and how much he sucked and how much he hurt you and everything, I'm like, whoa, hold on. Like, let's wait until like, third or fourth date a little bit. Let's wait till I get to know you a little bit. And then we can get into that conversation when we have some trust built with one another. And I can actually feel like I can pastor you through it and not just say, that stinks. I'm sorry. Like, I don't really know what happened. I don't really know you. Like, I know the pastor, but I don't know you. So that makes it tough. And naturally, I'm going to, just being honest, naturally, I'm going to first think, okay, I'm going to side with the pastor's line of view first. And the reason for that is because of the people that have left me and have gone on to say awful things about me that were not true. So I'd be doing a disservice to another pastor if somebody walks in and starts spewing off stuff to me about them, and I take it as a fact automatically. But that's what having a relationship with that pastor will do, is I can call him because I have his number. It's the best part. Say, you know what? That pastor really hurt me really bad. And they said this, that, and the other. First thing I want to say is, have you talked to them about this? Have you actually had a one-on-one with the pastor? Have you told them how you're feeling? It's the same thing with conflict resolution. If somebody in my church comes up to me and says, hey, this person said this and they really hurt me, or blah, 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 blah. They start talking trash about him. The first thing I'm gonna stop them and I'm gonna say, hey, before you tell me anything else, have you talked to them yet? If their answer is no, I have not talked to them, I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't want to hear anything from you until you go talk to that person and try to work it out between the two of you. Don't bring it to me. Like, you don't need to bring me into it. That's just biblical. That's biblical conflict resolution. Go to your brother who has sinned against you. And if he doesn't listen to you, then bring somebody else. And if he still doesn't listen, then bring the church involved and bring the pastors in. If he still doesn't listen, then you can kick him out. Right. But there's an order of things. And sometimes people want to jump the gun. And a lot of times just because they're hurt, because they're emotional. But I want to kind of bring them back into the correct biblical order of saying, hey, listen, I don't need to hear all this. Like, I know the pastor from down the street. I know his heart isn't like that. Have you talked to him first? No, I have not. Well, then don't talk to me. Go talk to him. Have you talked to him? Yes, I have talked to him. Okay, cool. What did that conversation go like? You know what I mean? Like, maybe we can help find some reconciliation. In fact, I told a couple one time that they needed to stop coming to our church and go back to their home church because they left out of anger and they came over here. They wanted to come to our church. And I said, I'm gonna be honest, guys, I think y'all need to go back to your home church. And they were like, what? What pastor tells people to leave and to go to the church around the corner? Well, it's because this isn't your home. That's your home. And the pastor might have said something or might have done something you might have disagreed with, but go talk to them and go work it out. Like, I would want a pastor down the street to tell my people to come back to me and to tell me what happened and work it out with me. So I'm going to give them the same benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give them the same courtesy and do that with them too. So I'll get real passionate about this stuff, man. I hope that's okay.
That's okay. That's good because I think confrontation, a lot of people are afraid of that. So if they
Yes.
are hurt, like, and I'm very guilty of that too. I mean, I've grown a lot in the past couple years, but I used to, like, if I was hurt or offended, my instinct is automatically to run. And
Yeah.
then if I'm confronted and I'm asked, like, oh, okay, did I do anything wrong? All I'll say is, oh no, I'm okay. Like,
Right.
I won't want to actually address it because um I don't like confrontation. And
Hmm.
I feel like maybe it won't matter.
Right.
Like, even if I tell you, yeah, this situation, it did kind of hurt and I felt this way. Um, I feel like it'll just be blown off or, like, kind of surfacey, like, oh, okay, well, that's not what I meant, and that's it. Um, but I think, again, running away also does not fix it because you're
Exactly.
going to continue to take that with you until you confront it. And then obviously, time goes by and you can't always confront with that person. You have to come to the realization, like, okay, you know what? In your healing and growing process, like, maybe what happened in that at this point, at that time, like, that person didn't really mean it. Or I was really sensitive. Like, I'm a really sensitive person and I know that. So, oh, I was really hurt. Maybe I was being too sensitive. And it's okay to admit you're too sensitive.
Sure.
I think uh so in the last couple of years, I've done a lot of, like, self-reflection too. Like, okay, I did this and I left. I did this and I left. I'm really good at leaving. But that's also going to spill out in relationships, in friendships. And every time something gets hard, you're just going to run away. You're
Right.
never going to stay. And then you want to get married. What's going to happen? Going to run away and get divorced? Like, so you can have a safe place, which I think the church should be a safe place where you
Yes.
can have those hard conversations and learn how to not be confrontational, but go up to someone and say, look, this happened. It hurt. I'm sure you didn't mean it. And
Yeah.
then that gives the other person, yeah, you know what? I didn't even realize I did that. And
Yes.
so for me, I'm starting to realize that a lot. And I think the body of Christ should be the place where you can have those conversations and
Yes.
then learn how to do that. And then you'll go out in your friendships, your relationships, your marriage. Uh, if you're not married but wanting to get married, or if you're married, like, to learn. Now you have tools to use.
Yeah.
So
No, I think
I really like what you said because that is really true. And I think we really need to learn how to do that well.
absolutely. Offense will destroy your heart and it will turn into bitterness over time if you don't confront it. I preached this last Sunday. Unaddressed offense will lead to a lifetime of bitterness. Just is what it is. Look at Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was the best basketball player of all time, arguably still is, potentially, however you think about LeBron. But Michael Jordan is, at this point, honestly, just kind of a bitter old man. And it's because he's held on to so many offenses over the years from people who have said things about him, have said things to him, have done things against him. And it's tough to watch. It's tough to even hear him talk sometimes because he's just so oddly insecure and prideful. And he just has held on to this offense and held on to these things for so long that it's led him to be a bitter old man. And it's tough when people live that kind of a life. So unaddressed offense will always lead to a lifetime of bitterness. And you're being able to have healthy conflict resolution, crucial conversations, as good book, I believe is what it's called. And having those hard conversations with people, man, most of the time, like you said, it's just a misunderstanding. It's just something that somebody said with the wrong tone. You were texting them and, the tone wasn't got through the text the right way, or their values and their priorities are just slightly different than yours. And you think that it should matter to them more than it does. But then they, if you would just talk to them, they could explain, well, this is why I made the decision I made. It's the same thing I was talking about earlier. Like most people don't want to do that. But if you can get to a point where you can have healthy conflict and healthy conversations with people that you feel like have hurt you, man, that's a beautiful. And the church should be the best at that because God gave us a literal blueprint for how we are to have those conversations. And yet, it's tough. We don't like conflict. We don't like change. We don't like, having to have those conversations. Nobody likes that. And the people that do like that, they just like to stir up trouble. Okay. If you say you like having those conversations, you're a weirdo and you just like to stir up trouble. You are probably just a confrontational person. Okay. So, but I think you and me are the same. It's hard to have those conversations, but they're crucial in order to move on in your life because offense ultimately doesn't hurt other people, that hurts you. So
just like unforgiveness doesn't hurt the other person, it only hurts you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good.
That was a good topic. I'm really glad we touched on that.
Yeah, I love that.
What do you wish? Hold on, that's a little loud. What do you wish unbelievers knew about Jesus?
Oh my goodness. What a great question. I would say many times unbelievers, people that don't go to church, people that don't believe in God, the first thing I would want them to know is that he's real, of course. People that don't believe, it's hard for me because I've seen so many things. There's a song, it's called Too Good to Not Believe by Brandon Lake. And I understand where he's coming from when he sings. I've seen cancer disappear. I've seen like the dead raised. I've seen incredible miracles, and there's miracles that are happening every single day all around us. And I wish that people would be able to just see that, man, God is real, that he's actually there, that he loves me ultimately. And that God is not a hateful God. I think a lot of times people think the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament aren't the same. I think the God of the Old Testament is this angry dude up in the clouds, just like conquering all these different cities and nations and stuff. And they just don't understand the idea that, man, we have sinned against God, this God who is perfect and holy, and we have sinned against him and we have messed up. All of us, me, you, everyone in this world has sin within us. And God is this perfect and holy God who has standards, right, of holiness that he asks us to live by. And we all fall short of the glory of God. That's what the Bible says, right? We all have fallen short. And yet the Bible also says that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And that while you are still in the middle of your sin, you could be sinning against God right now as you are listening to this, wherever you're at. You could have been sinning right before it. You might be listening to this, and then right afterwards, you go into party and be sinning or something, whatever it is you might be doing. I don't know. And yet, in the middle of your offense, God offers forgiveness. In the middle of you offending God's heart, in the middle of you talking trash about him or doing things that hurts his heart, God still offers out his hand of forgiveness. Jesus, when he was on the cross, the Roman soldiers and the Jewish leaders, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, they were in the middle of murdering him. And what does he say? Forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they do. I don't know if I could do that, if I'm being honest with you. In the middle of someone brutally murdering me, making fun of me, whipping me, putting a crown of thorns on my head, right? I mean, they put it above his head, this is Jesus, King of the Jews. It's sarcastic. It was a joke because the Jews thought that this was supposed to be the Messiah that was going to be their new king and overthrow the Roman government and all this stuff. And yet they put this sarcastic sign above his head. This is Jesus, King of the Jews. Look at your king now. He's on the cross dying. They're spitting on him. They pulled out his beard. They whipped him. I mean, it's crazy. And they hung him on a cross, put nails in his hands and his feet. And yet he's up there on the cross with all of the sin of the world on his shoulders. He had never done one thing wrong. And yet he puts the sin of all of your sin, all of my sin, and the whole world on his back. Says, I'll take care of it. Don't worry. God forgive each and every one of them. And I wish that people would understand how deep that love goes. And that God is real, that he loves you, that he cares for you, and that no matter what you're going through, no matter what you've done, you're never too far. You're never too far gone for God to do something in your life. That addiction can be broken. That marriage can be restored. That calling that you've been running from can be restored to you. Your kids, you feel like you don't have a relationship with them, or you don't know what you're doing as a parent, you feel like you failed in so many ways, man, God can help you with that. Like, God wants to do life with you and to help you and to give you wisdom, to give you his grace and his mercy. You got to give yourself grace, but God gives us the ultimate grace, right? Through his son, Jesus. And so, man, I just wish that people would understand the radical love of Jesus. That's why our church is called Radical Church. Our mission is that people would understand and know the radical love of Jesus for them. And so that's my heart's cry, is for people to know that Jesus radically loves you and cares for you, no matter who you are, what you've done.
Yeah. So we all know, well, now that you explained it, Jesus died for our sin. What would you say to, let me see how I can word this well, victims of abuse who they didn't sin, the sin was done to them. What would you say to them? Like, where is Jesus in that moment? And what does he offer them at that point? And I know a lot are like, like, why did this happen to me? We will never probably know that answer, but what does Jesus bring to them?
Yeah. First thing I would say right off the bat is that everything bad in this world is not from God. If there is sin and there is evil in this world, it does not come from Jesus. It comes from Satan. Satan is the accuser. He is the father of lies. The Bible says that when he lies, he speaks his native language. That's a powerful statement. He is a liar. He's a cheater. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. That's what Satan wants to do. That is his goal, is to steal, to kill you, and to destroy your life, and to steal your soul away from God, who is your creator. And yet, when you look at who God is, you got to look at it from the perspective of who God is and who Satan is, and it makes a whole lot more sense. God is what? Love. God is, and that's what the Bible says. God is love. He is the personification of love at his core. He shows grace. He shows mercy. He cares for us. He loves us. Jesus mourned when Lazarus died. He wept multiple times when bad things happened, right, to good people, okay? And God is sad and mourns when these things happen. God is sovereign, God's all knowing. He knows everything from the past, future, and present. And yet we're not robots, right? We make our own decisions. And unfortunately, sometimes people influenced by Satan and influenced by evil that is in this world do bad things against good people. They do bad things against bad people, right? The rain falls on the good and the bad. And while it seems like sometimes it's like, well, why didn't God help me? Why didn't God respond? Or why didn't God answer that prayer? Whatever that looks like. And I'm talking about that actually next week, not this Sunday, but learning how to forgive God. That's actually my message for next week. We're talking about forgiveness. And of course, God is not responsible for it. And that's the main message, is that it's not God that's doing it. It's Satan that's doing those things through broken, fallen humanity. And it's unfortunate, but Satan is the prince of this world. That's what the Bible says, that Satan has been given authority over this world. Now, ultimately, he is trampled under our feet. We have victory over Satan. That's what we believe, that Christ has victory over Satan. But it says that he's like a lion, roaming over the earth, seeking out whom he may devour. So he's looking for opportunities to hurt you. He's looking for opportunities to do sin and evil and bad things to you, in you, and through you, and in this world. And so every evil thing that happens in this world, you got to understand it is not from God. That's the first thing that you have to understand. And once you get your perspective right on who God is and what he does, and who Satan is and what he does, it puts a whole lot more in perspective. And then you can start to blame the right person. A lot of times we blame God for things that happen when it was not God's fault. It was Satan's fault. It was broken humanity's fault. And then we wonder, well, why didn't God show up? And I think that's a hard thing to talk about, because you're like, well, why didn't God stop it? Why didn't God, and the reality of the situation is it's us that messed it up in the first place. Humanity is who sinned in the first place. We were the ones through Adam and Eve, and every single person that has come after them has sinned against God. And we're the ones that perpetuate sin in this world, whether we know it or believe it or like it. We are. And so we say, well, why didn't God stop it? Well, man, sin is just a part of this world. And until Jesus comes back, and until we go to heaven, man, sin is going to be a part of this world. Brokenness and darkness is going to be a part of this world. God cannot stop every single thing that happens. Could he? Sure. But if he stopped every bad thing from happening, if he made all of us, and if he made everything so perfect and so easy and so amazing for every single one of us all the time, we really wouldn't have a choice then on why we are serving God, right? Because bad things can happen in my life, and I know who to blame. I blame Satan. I don't blame God. I say, God, you're so good. You're right there in the middle of it, even with me. Even in the middle of my hardest of hardest times, even in the middle of the most awful things, God, I know that you're still there. And that's a hard prayer to pray. That's a hard place to be able to get to. But you have to start with understanding who God is and who Satan is, and then it just puts everything else in a better perspective. You won't go off blaming God for things that he didn't do.
Yeah, let me ask another question, kind of on the same thing. So the sinner can go to Jesus for forgiveness. The person who has been abused, how did they go to Jesus? So you can go to Jesus, you can go to him for forgiveness. How does someone who the sin was committed against go to Jesus? Because they're not going to go to him for forgiveness. But how does that healing process begin with Jesus?
That's a great question again. How do we go to Jesus when something bad has happened against us? Man, I think you have to understand, first off, it wasn't your fault. And a lot of times victims will blame themselves for a lot of the bad things that happen to them. Kids, this is classic. Kid will blame themselves for their parents getting divorced. That wasn't your fault. There's nothing you could have done differently, right? Now you were probably a little crazy as a kid, right? You know what I'm saying? Like all of us kids are, but like if your parents get divorced, it's not your fault. They made their own decisions. They were influenced by God. They were sometimes influenced by the evil one and by their sinful desires within them. They made their own choices, and you are not responsible for the choices of people that did things to you or against you. So certainly don't blame yourself. That's the first thing that I would say. Um, but then how do you go to Jesus? You know, even for forgiving somebody else, that's really tough, right? How do you forgive somebody else for the things that they've done against you? I think if you understand the depth of God's forgiveness for you, then you'll understand how we have to forgive others. We're in a series 70 times 7, which is based off of the verse where Peter asked Jesus, how many times do I have to forgive people if they sin against me? He's like 1, 3, 5, up to 7 maybe. And Jesus says, yeah, 7, but 70 times 7. And the point is that it's just unlimited. You know, you got to keep forgiving and keep forgiving and keep forgiving when somebody has a repentant heart. Now, that doesn't mean forgiveness means reconciliation. Those two things are not the same, right? You can have forgiveness, completely forgive somebody within your heart. Does not mean you have to give that person the same level of access into your life that they had before they hurt you. They've got to prove to you. Now, the person that has done the hurting, the person that has done the offense against you, it is now their job to prove to you that they deserve to have the same level of access as before. You could have forgiven them completely in your heart, but that does not mean that you have to allow them to hurt you again and again and again. That's why I would say if you're in an abusive relationship as a wife, usually that's how it's going to be, but as a husband or as a spouse, if you're in an abusive relationship and you would say, well, the only way that I can get out of this biblically is if they cheat on me, or if they abandon me or something like that. Listen, they've already abandoned you. Like they are not loving you as the way that Christ loves the church. Like you do not have to stay in a relationship with somebody that is beating you and causing you physical harm or causing your kids harm, where you feel like that you're gonna, be hurt at any moment. You're fearing for your life. God doesn't want that for you. And I know some people, some legalistic people would say, no, it can only be for infidelity. It can only be for, adultery in that moment or whatever it might be. And listen, that's just absolute BS, in my opinion, personally. I'm thinking like they've abandoned you. Like they are injuring you. They have already in their mind, they have hurt you to the point. The Bible says, Jesus actually said, if you think bad things against your brother, it's like you're murdering him, right? It's like imagine the thoughts that are going through that man's head as he's beating his wife over and over and over again. And she feels trapped because she's trying to honor God. Nah, man, that's not how that works. No, not at all. Get out of there. And if anyone's hearing this, I sure hope if let a pastor tell you right now, you have license to get out of there. God's not going to hold you liable for that. Absolutely. So, how do you come to Jesus in those moments, in your darkest moments when people have hurt you and they've sinned against you in different ways? I think you just have to come first off from a place of brokenness. God's not afraid of your brokenness. He's not afraid of your questions. He's not afraid of you being mad at him for why this thing happened to you. He just wants you to be real. He wants you to be raw. He wants you to be honest. And I think God cares about your honesty more than he cares about anything else. And if you could just be real and just have a conversation with him and just be honest. I think sometimes people come to God and they feel like they have to say things a certain way. They have to like have a perfect prayer. No, I mean, some people, I know some people have cussed at God right in front of me. And I'm just like, I love that. Not because they're cussing, but because they're being real. They're just being honest. That's just where they're at. They're mad at God. They're mad at the situation. They're frustrated. They don't understand. God, where were you? Why didn't you show up? Why didn't you heal this person? Why did you let this happen to me? Why did I lose my job? Why did my wife leave me? those are some tough questions. But God will help you if you understand that He is actually there with you through all of it. And it's Satan that he just won the battle. But man, he will not win the ultimate victory. He does not rule your life. And the past mistakes that you've made, the past things that have happened to you, do not have to define your future. Let God define your future, and go to Him knowing that He is perfect and holy. And He did not cause this thing to happen to you, but He wants to comfort you. The Holy Spirit is your comforter, and He wants to help you through it. So just be broken and be honest. It's all good. God will get you through it. And people, find some people around you that can lift you up too.
Yeah. And then I think that was great. That was really good. I think that will help a lot of people. I also think also remembering the enemy lies.
Yes.
So he can definitely try to manipulate you in making you think God's the one who causes everything. And if he loved you, that wouldn't have happened.
Yes.
And just remembering that. I remember when I was in high school, like before I got saved, that was the biggest lie, I believe, was there were a lot of things that had happened to me when I was younger through the foster care system and stuff. That as I got older and was in high school, the enemy really had me believing like God does not love me. Because if
Right.
he did, all these things wouldn't have happened to me when I was little. And like
Yeah.
to the point where I was like, I think I would rather go to hell than go to heaven and worship a God who put me through all this stuff. But then, and then I got saved, but really remembering like the enemy will lie to you
Yes.
and he can take you to a pretty dark place. And it's really important to remember just like verses in prayer and worship music. Like there were times where I would sleep with worship music on because, you know, that I would have like horrible dreams. So just like doing little things that I think where you're keeping the presence of God around you too. Um, and then also remembering what I always try to remind myself of is like things that have happened to me in the past. God's going to use that for his glory. Like now
Amen.
I can minister to someone who maybe had an abusive foster care situation. In Texas, I worked with this ministry who uh, through the church who did foster care.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to answer questions for like those foster parents who had kids or who were, I think, adopting through foster care, but kids who had been abused in the foster care system. So
Wow.
always remembering like God will use it for his glory if you allow him to. Well, I
Yeah.
don't know, that might be wrong, but you could tell me.
No.
But
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
also
God
remembering
everything for good for those who are called according to His purpose. That's really it. I mean, I can turn around any bad thing that has ever happened to you, and now your pain has purpose. Now your pain
that.
has, a reason for why it happened. Now, did God cause it to happen so that you could have some testimony later? No, that's the thing where we get it twisted. But because it happened to you, Satan thinks he won. Satan thinks he did something when you had your experience in the foster care system, right? Like Satan thinks that he's like, oh yeah, like I got her to believe that God doesn't love her. I lied to her. I really got her. And then God turns around and pulls the Uno reverse card and says, no, actually, I do love you. And now all these things that happened to you that really sucked, now you're going to be able to minister to other people and use this awful situation to help others that are going through the same thing and show them that I also love them too. So screw you, Satan. That's basically what
Yeah,
happens. So that's kind of,
exactly.
God just pulls that Uno reverse card on Satan quite often. So
Yeah. Okay, I have two other questions. I think it's getting late. I don't know how long we've been on here.
I don't even know. Almost 2 hours now. It's been good though.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It does not feel
it's
that
been good.
long. I want to respect your time.
All good. Thank
Um,
you.
so Christians can obviously struggle with depression or mental health issues. And it seems kind of like maybe it's getting a little better now, but like kind of a stigma to really
Hmm.
even talk about that at church.
Right.
Um, how would I think, especially now because it's becoming so like so many more people are having these issues. How can we as Christians, one, love them, and two, how as a pastor can you give your congregation a place where they feel safe enough that they can actually share that?
Yeah, I think that's an extremely important conversation to have. First thing is first is that mental health and hormone imbalances, chemicals that are in your brain can be off, right? Like this is a real medical thing that exists. And many times in the church people like to say that it doesn't exist or that it's just Satan coming after you. No one would ever say that about a cancer patient that has a cancerous tumor in their lung. No one's going to go up to that person and say, well, that's not real. That's just Satan coming up against you. Like uh, they wouldn't say that. They also wouldn't say, well, don't take chemo to get rid of it. But yet, when it comes, or diabetes, somebody has diabetes, they're not going to tell them not to take their insulin or their medication, whatever it is that they have to take, right? And yet, when it comes to mental health, we say, well, we can't take medication for that. And we just need to pray against it. It's demonic. We just need to pray against it in the name of Jesus. And I'm like, listen, that's great. I want to pray against every sickness in the name of Jesus. Every disease has to bow at the name of Jesus, right? Like we believe in healing. We believe that God can work miracles today. Absolutely. At the same time, we're not going to go up to a cancer patient and tell them not to take their chemo. We're not going to do that. And so why would we go to somebody that's depressed, somebody that has ADHD like myself, and say, don't take your meds? Uh, because there is a stigma against it. And we think that for some reason in the church, it's become this demonic thing, when in reality, it is a physical ailment. Just like when you break your arm, like it is there, it's happening. There are chemical and hormonal imbalances in your brain. We just got to be honest with people about that enough. I did a message all about that where I said, hey, listen, you're no less of a Christian if you have to take medication for depression or for anxiety or for any kind of mental health, bipolar, ADHD. I mean, like you go down the list. Um, if you have a verified medical thing that's going on in your body, most definitely do what you need to do to get your balances right, because you're not going to be able to accomplish everything that God has called you to accomplish if your brain and your body are not working in the way that they're supposed to. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And so if you have the ability to anyway, to fix some of that stuff that's going on in your brain, like for example, my brother is autistic, right? Um, it's tough for him, and he takes medication in order to make himself, uh, you know, live up to his fullest potential as a child of God. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Do we think that God gives lawyers abilities? Absolutely. Do we think that God gives pastors abilities? Yes. Do we think that He gives many different professions and many different ministers and ministries different things that especially as a pastor, like God gives me the ability to minister to people in a special way, and He gives me ideas and strategies and all kinds of things. Do we think that God has not given doctors medication ideas? Like, do we think that for some reason doctors are just immune from God speaking to them and helping them to develop medication that can help our world be a better place and help us think better and help our minds be in a better place? Come on, man. So I think we need to give people a little bit more grace and understanding that mental health is a real thing. We got to take care of ourselves. I would not, this is my personal opinion now. My first thing, if you're going to go straight to medication and you're not going to take care of your body and do other things that you need to do, I think I would rethink that, right? Like if you say I'm depressed, but you eat 10 cheeseburgers a day and you don't work out, and you don't take supplements or multivitamins, you're not doing the things that that you need to do. I would start there, right? Like try to start with those things. Now, some of it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, it's like maybe I have to get on, the medication so that I can feel better enough to do those things. Listen, I get that. Some people, like for me, for example, I know that if I have a regular workout schedule where I work out in the morning before work, if I eat a high protein breakfast, if I have good supplements that I put in my body, if I get L-tyrosine, ashwagandha, rhodiola, if I get theanine, if I get my B vitamins, my multivitamin, my omega-3 fish oils with high EPA, like I know these things because I've researched them and I know that they help my brain and they help my body to function at the highest level possible. I take a protein shake. I work out in the morning. I try to work out hard. I messed up my rotator cuff, so it's been kind of tough the last couple of months, but I'm going to try to do those things before I go to a heavy medication, right? Like, you got to be honest with yourself. Where are you at? Like, can you do those things? I would say if you need to do both, do both. Don't just go to medication and let that be let it be your lifeline. Man, if you're on medication, also do the other things you need to take care of your body. Like you said, gluttony is a huge problem that we don't talk about in the church, man. This is the temple of the Holy Spirit. God has gifted us these bodies. We've got to do the best that we can to take care of them. I know there's, people will harp on people that have a thyroid issue, and maybe they gain a whole lot of weight because of it, or lupus or something like that. People will give them a hard time because they start gaining weight. They're like, well, it's calories in and calories out. That's it. And I know we're getting into like exercise combo here a little bit, but at the end of the day, yeah, there's some things that affect your weight and it fluctuates up and down based off of hormones and all that stuff. So man, do your best to get that stuff under control and then trust God with the rest. Really, that's it. And if you need to take a medication, if you need to go to therapy, you need to get a good Christian counselor in your life, get a good pastor in your life that can pour into you, get a good friend group around you. Do an audit of the people in the media that you allow into your head. What music are you listening to? What movies are you watching? All of that stuff affects us, and it affects our mental health. How much are you scrolling on TikTok? What does your algorithm look like? Is it all doom and gloom? Or is it, healthy parenting? Is it exercise stuff? Like, what does your algorithm look like right now? Maybe you could notice some patterns of some things that you have found yourself in, and you need to get off of that negativity, find some positivity. So mental health, there's many different facets to it, but medication is not, it should not be stigmatized in a bad way. Therapy and getting counseling should not be looked down upon in the church. As Christians, we need to have faith in God, trust in God, but also understand that, man, there are real medical things that people deal with, and we just got to be honest, like with ourselves, that we wouldn't do that for a cancer patient, wouldn't do that for a diabetic. We shouldn't do that for somebody struggling with mental health.
Yeah. And then as a pastor, one thing I noticed is because I've struggled with like depression and stuff as well. And there were points when I was living in Texas. I mean, I had moved there by myself.
Yeah.
So it was it was very different, that I had gotten in some dark places. How would you recommend pastors address people in their congregation who are struggling and who, do go to them for help? But I don't think, I'm trying to say this, I don't think pastors know how to navigate someone like me who was in a really dark place, who was really depressed. I wasn't really leaving my apartment for a little while, but
Yeah.
I tried to get some sort of help through just some Christian help. But what advice do you have for pastors to navigate someone like that if they were to come to them and be, someone came to you like, look, I'm struggling with depression, I'm having a lot of crazy thoughts, like, help. What would be the first thing? What advice do you have for pastors for that?
Yeah, a lot of times we harp on the things that are obvious, and they are helpful, but I don't think it can be helpful in this situation sometimes. So we would say, pray more and read your Bible more and come to church more. Like, yeah, okay, yes, all those things are good, right? But the first thing that I would say, let's say somebody comes up to a pastor, comes up to me, I'm struggling with depression. I'm looking around and I'm saying, okay, where's your community? Who are you hanging out with? I'd be looking at all those kinds of things, like because I think about those. I'm thinking about your physical health. I'm thinking about what are you putting in your body? Like, what are the conversations you're having? Are you married? Is there stress that's coming from that? How are you guys doing? Are you guys okay? Like, what's your work family balance looking like? There's a whole lot of things like that I would talk to them about. But at the end of the day, most pastors are not trained licensed counselors. We are not. We can do some of that. And I think there's some wisdom in starting people off in that way and saying, hey, yeah, like I'll talk to you a couple of times. We'll have a few sessions and I just want to know what's going on. Mainly just because we care, right? Like I just want to know what's going on in your life. Like how can I pray for you? How can I support you? Maybe I can help you. Maybe it's something I can help with, but maybe it's not. And if it's not, we have to be honest with ourselves enough to know, hey, I am not equipped to handle this. Here's the number of somebody that I know that is, right? And give them a good Christian counselor they can go to, or another pastor that is good in counseling that could help them through that. But also try to set them up with other people. I think having a good community, like you said, you came here and you were alone, right? Many times we live life alone. And if we could find a community of people just to do life with, man, that increases people's mental health so much more. Like if you're by yourself, if you're alone, or if you feel like you're alone, or if the people around you aren't really, your people, or they're not supporting you, they're not lifting you up, man, you got to find some people that do. And hopefully within our churches, there are those people. Not everybody's going to be everybody's friend, right? I get that. Like, I can't be everybody's friend. Like if somebody came to me and I've had this happen a few times where, I have a whole lot of people that want me to be in their small group or want me to be in their, they want to have one-on-one meetings with me every week to disciple them. And I'm like, I love you, but I can't do that. Like if I did that with every single person, if you wanted to have a one-on-one meeting with me every week, man, I would have no time to get anything done in my life ever. So what can I do? If I can't, somebody has to. And so that's generally where groups would come in. Now we just want to make sure that we have good group leaders that are equipped. Not that they know everything about the Bible, not that they are trained counselors, but that they just care about people and they love God. Like, are you a natural connector of people? And you are a good host. You just love bringing people together. You love fellowship. You love the conversations. You love digging deep in people's lives and getting in the grid, getting down to the dirt with people and talking about things. And then do you love God? Like, do you have your faith in Jesus and a good, decent, even solid foundation of who God is? We want to make sure that we train those people well enough to where we can trust them with a group of 10 to 12 people, whatever it might be, and then send them out. And then and people are naturally going to gravitate towards people that are like them, have similar interests, things they care about. We have a military and first responders group now that is starting. I think that's fantastic because I cannot relate to military and first responders as much as they can relate to one another. There's stories that they will share with one another they might never share with me because I wouldn't get it, but they would. Now I have the theological training and background and they don't, but they have the ability to just sit there with that person and listen and understand and care. And pastoral care, if I could say this, I got this from Carey Nieuwhof, great pastor and leader, podcaster. He said 98% of pastoral care is not about the pastor having to do the care. It's just about somebody doing it. Like somebody has to do the care. It doesn't matter if it's you. And 98, he said 98% of pastoral care is just having someone who cares. That's it. It doesn't have to be the pastor. So as long as somebody cares and somebody is there helping you through whatever it is that you're going through, that's a good thing. And I'm happy with that. In fact, I would rather it be that way because I physically cannot care for everybody that's coming to our church. There's over 300 people now. When it was 100, it was a little bit easier. 300, what happens if we're at 3,000? Who's going to be doing then? Right? So we have to empower people to care for one another and get people into groups of like-minded people that have similar interests, similar stage of life, and then just click with one another. And every time that somebody has gotten in a group with other people that are like them, and I've connected, you know what, Sarah, you really remind me of this lady in our church. Her name's Jenny, and I would love to connect you with Jenny. You mind if I give her your number? She's got an awesome group. There's a few ladies that meet. I feel like you would really click with that group. Let me holler, let me get you guys together. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, absolutely. And they start going to that group and they get plugged in. They're like, oh my gosh, like life is amazing now, So getting in a good community is going to help. Getting a good Christian counselor, finding a good pastor that can pour into you on Sundays, hopefully throughout the week a little bit. Many different things. And then, medication if you need it. Get healthy. Do the things you got to do there. So,
yeah, and then I think also just to go with groups too, could be another thing that helps the pastor with his mental health as well, because then some of the, I don't want to say burden, but some of the burden is taken off of him, because now you have these groups where people are forming relationships and they're seeing each other every week. And now they're going to be able to feel comfortable. And now that space is going to become safe for them. And that's where they can, share what's going on through the week and stuff. So I think that also would help a lot with pastors not having to be the only one people go to.
Yeah, we can't and we shouldn't.
Mm-mm.
Should not. Right.
Yeah, I know when I joined a group, it was so much better. I felt like I could talk about anything there, and I became close with some of the people in that group that we would hang out. We went to lunch, we would do other things. And when I did fall into a dark place, I called them.
Yeah.
I texted them, let them know like, hey, I'm not in a good space. And that's what the body of Christ should be doing.
Yes.
So I think that's really good. And then okay. Let's see. We've gone pretty long. Okay, this is probably I'll make this the last question for you. Sure. Would you ever plant another radical church outside of Texas?
Oh, that is a great question. Man, you have some good questions on this pod. Let me tell you. Would I ever plant another radical outside of Texas? I'm not going to say never, because I said I would never do this. So, and I'm literally wearing the t-shirt. I have been there, done that, got the t-shirt for Radical Church and Kyle. So who knows? Maybe one day we'll have some campuses and plant out. We would probably start with a few local, maybe around here. But I am most definitely not opposed to starting another Radical Church or another campus or whatever that looks like. Maybe it's even not another radical church. Maybe we just plant a church, and like my pastor did with me, their church is called Discovery Church. And but I had the heart and the name of Radical Church. We wanted to do our own thing that was separate but yet connected to Discovery Church. So they sent us out, gave us a lot of financial resources. Their board is still our board to this day. That's actually about to change pretty soon. But they're our parent church. And so I love that idea of being a parent church, where we are the daughter, they're the parent church, and they're able to help us financially with the board, many different resources that they have, they can help us with, but we have our own identity. I'm the pastor. They don't tell me what to do, but they just help guide us in our church. And so even if it's that, I would love to do that for another church someday, for another pastor. But I'm not opposed to having Radical Church take over the U.S. either. So, I mean, we'll
Well,
see. Maybe one day we'll have one near you, listeners, or near you, Sonia. There we
yeah, California can use some good churches. Okay,
go.
last question for reals this time.
You're good.
Uh,
This is
okay, couple more then. Where do you see personally your personal goals? Do you see yourself in 5 years? And where do you see Radical in even the next year? Because I feel like you guys are growing so much and there's so much happening so quickly. Even in the next year, like where do you see Radical and what's your vision for it for the next 5 or
yeah. That's
next 2?
for me personally. I would love to see my leadership grow. Um, I'd love to be not just a pastor of Radical Church, but start pastoring other pastors.
You
I
know,
think,
I was gonna say something like that earlier
yeah, go ahead. Is that something you have
for
felt or you?
you, not for me, for you. Like I feel like you would be really good at doing that.
Oh man, thank you. I appreciate that. That is something that has been on my heart is helping the next guy. Um, you know, I don't even care if I get paid for it. Like I don't need a platform. I don't need uh, a big social media following. I don't care if our church it's mega church status. Would I love that? Sure, because that means we're reaching more people. More people are finding and following Jesus. That's fantastic. I would love that. But I don't need that, right? But what I do need is, and I do want, is to just help the next church planter do the thing that they feel like God has called them to do. The same way that my pastor did with me, and the same way that CMN, the church planting organization, helped me and trained me and my wife and our team. They've done some great things, and I want to be a part of helping the next generation of pastors and leaders and start pastoring them as well and building those relationships, mentoring other guys. So for me, that's one thing I'd love to see. I'd love to see uh, personal goals. I mean, I'd love to just get to the point where we have a full, 5 years, we have full-time staff, complete full-time staff, and I'm just able to hang out with them all day long. That's all I want to do. If I can be honest with you, I think that's the most difficult thing is I see down the line what I want my ideal work week to look like. And it is literally just having coffee and lunch with people, sitting, reading the word of God and getting vision for the future, praying, worshiping the Lord, having those times with God, those intimate moments with him where he can really speak to me, and I want to get to that place. Like I said, it's a grind at the beginning when you start anything. You start a business, start a church. It's all the same. It's tough. And so I want to get to the point 5 years from now where I'm in the flow, where I'm in the rhythm of, all right, cool. Like we've got our flow, we've got our rhythm. My kids are getting a little bit older now. Like I'm able to do some of the things that I've been wanting to do, but haven't been able to because we've been trying to build this thing from the ground up. But once you kind of get to critical mass, and we're at that now, we're at 300. That's critical mass. Like we're doing good. We ain't going anywhere. Is what I'm trying to say. Um, then it starts to be a little bit easier, quote unquote, in a sense, where you can start to delegate more out and start to do more leadership development, personal development, things like that. So um, I would love as well personally to write a book. I think that's something I want to do.
That was my next question. I was going to ask you, when are you writing a book?
I don't,
That's
man,
literally my next question.
I've had that a few times now. People keep telling me book. A few people have told me that now. And I think the same way that people have been telling me to start Radical Church, it's the same thing people will be telling me to write a book now. And so maybe that's something that God has for me. Once again, I would just love for it to encourage other people that they can hear the voice of God, that they can do the things that God has called them to do. I feel like there's a story that, is inside of me. I feel like there's a story that we have to tell that is worth telling. And so I hope that one day I can write a book. We'll see. And then for the church, I would say, yeah, it's growing real fast. So we're launching our third service this Sunday, which is amazing. Our 3 year birthday, 3 years, three services. We're excited about that. But within the next couple of years, I would love to see us own our own building. We were in elementary school, then a middle school, and now we are leasing this warehouse that we have built out the inside to be a church. It was just a blank warehouse, and then we built the whole thing out. But we're not in debt, which is fantastic. We paid cash for everything, and so we have no debt as a church, which is awesome. But I would love to see us buy and own land, build a building, let it be a hub, a community hub for people to come to, not just for our church people, but for people in the community. Get a good coffee shop going, maybe something like that. We got to have a good one there. Maybe do like a co-working space, or have the ability to have a school, like a Christian school or something like that for kids. I grew up in the Christian school system my entire life, so I kind of have a burden for that. Who knows what God will do? But I do feel like it will start with us having the faith to step out, buy our own land, build something that's beautiful for generations to come. And so if we could get there in 5 years, 5 years from now, I'd also love to see us be numerically, if I'm being honest, I would love to get to 1,000 people. That's just a goal that I have. Our city is growing, our community is growing. I would love for our church to get to 1,000 people, not because of the number, but just because I feel like it's a goal that I have for me personally. And it kind of keeps my mind right that I don't ever want to be stagnant. I don't ever want to just be still. I want to be reaching people. I want people to be getting saved. I want people to be connecting in community. And I want our church to be a place where we have enough resources. If you have 1,000 people, you have the resources of 1,000 people. And if you have the resources of 1,000 people, you have a whole lot of resources to give back to the community that you live in and to preach the gospel to people in your backyard and all around the world. So I feel like we'll be able to do a lot more. Honestly, that's really another reason I want to be able to do as much as we can to bless and love people. So that's a goal there as well. So
Nice. I think you'll hit 1,000 before 5 years.
come on, I believe it. That's radical faith right there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think you got that. What's a misconception that you think people have about you?
A misconception about me. Okay.
It could be personal, pastor.
I think a misconception that people could have about me is that I am a marketer, and that's my main thinking. That's how I do everything. I know some people don't understand online marketing or whatever it might be. I think sometimes I'm not, only a couple people have ever actually said this. I don't know if a whole lot of people think it, but maybe. I feel like sometimes it'd be easy to say, well, I see your face on Instagram all the time or Facebook all the time because y'all are running ads, or, the reason why your church is growing is because you're good at marketing. And I would hope that people would not think that. But if somebody does think that, I think there is a misconception there because, man, I am most definitely sold out to Jesus, sold out to God, and to helping people find and follow him. The marketing part is just getting people through the doors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, doors. But then I'm going to preach Jesus. Like I'm not preaching prosperity gospel, like you can live however you want and God wants to make you rich and God wants, I'm not preaching TED Talks every single week. Like I'm preaching some messages that will, they're not tickling ears, right? I'm saying there's sin and there's heaven and hell. There's God and there's Satan and there's life and death. And we need to make sure that we're holy and that we're living a life that honors God, and talking about sin, talking about the cross, talking about the resurrection. Um, in my own personal life, worshiping Jesus on my own, right here in this office. I'm on my hands and my knees, on my face, right where I'm sitting right now. I'll move my chair and I will get on my hands and knees, put my face on the ground sometimes and pray and cry out to God for our city, cry out to God for my family, for our church. And so you can be good at marketing and you can be good at the practical side of church planting and also be sold out to Jesus and be spiritual as well. They're not opposed to each other. And we have the greatest message in the world, the message that Jesus came and died for us, but not that he stayed dead, but that he is alive again and that he loves us and cares for every single person, that has grace and forgiveness for every person here. And yet, um, people aren't good at telling that story. And I just want to be a good storyteller, whether that's through our services, whether that's through our online marketing, whether that's through videos that we produce, or me personally, the way that I live my life. I want to tell the story of Jesus and have it be compelling. Bill Johnson says this, a great pastor, but he says the most powerful thing in the world is the presence, or the most powerful thing in the universe is the presence of God. And I want to convey to people how powerful and how amazing God is. And if we get somebody through the doors through good marketing because that's something I'm gifted in, sure, it's just a gift God's given me. But ultimately, I'm a spiritual man that loves to read the Word of God, loves to pray, loves to worship. And the marketing side is just a great way to get people through the doors to tell them about Jesus. So there's that. Hopefully not too many people think that, but maybe a couple.
Maybe a couple, but that's a good one. And then, yeah, you're right. Marketing might get them in the door, but then Jesus, if that's where they're supposed to be, they'll know and they'll stay and they'll grow.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I want. I just want people to find and follow Jesus, whether or not they stay. I mean, even if they go somewhere else and they find another great church around, awesome. Like I'll do some great marketing and we'll get people to our church. We'll get them saved, and maybe they have a friend at another church. That's happened multiple times. Somebody gets saved and like, you know what? I actually have a friend that goes to this other church. I'm going to go over there. Awesome. Please go where you have a friend. I'd love that because that means you'll probably stay. So stay there and have fun and learn more about your faith. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. There's one thing like, so how I don't know if you remember Battle Cry.
I don't think so.
Okay, so it was like this big, huge like stadium event that they would do with Christian artists and speakers, and then they would have like an altar call. But the one thing that I always thought about was kind of what you were talking about. Okay, they're saved, but now where do they go?
Mm-hmm.
And so just being able to say, like, okay, you got saved at my church, but your friends here, okay, that's okay. There's other churches, but it's
Yeah.
also knowing like and then also as a pastor, knowing the churches, you could know what churches, and I don't know any there that aren't
Sure.
biblical, but what churches are actually preaching Jesus, and then which ones maybe no. But
Yeah.
as a new believer, you don't always know that. So
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think that's
it's going
really
to be
important is
that I'll send
again,
people.
that's huh?
There's always going to be a couple of churches I'll send people
Yeah.
to, just that I jive with, and that's fine. Like I think there's some pastors that probably wouldn't send people towards us, and that's fine. I get it. It's all good. But there's different churches for different people. There's all kinds of phrases you could use for that, I suppose. But I mean, some people love the loud. Our name is Radical Church. All right, like it's going to be loud. It's going to be lights. It's going to be fun, but it's also going to be, it's also going to be powerful. Like there's going to be people raising their hands. There's going to be people at the altars. We're going to pray. We're going to believe God for miracles. So it's not all just a smoke show, right? Like
Yeah.
we're going to have that stuff, and that's fine. It's creativity. The creativity and God are not opposed. Like God created everything that we know. So we use creativity to help people experience God in a different way and in a creative way. But the actual moments with God, we want to make sure that they're having real experiences with God, not just in the church as well, but outside of the church, in groups and in homes and restaurants. The best conversations to this day, I still feel like I've ever had about God or about my faith were on a couch, not in a pew at a church. So at somebody's house, 11 o'clock at night, just talking through life, talking about God, talking about what's going on. So that's what we want for people.
Yeah, and and what I appreciate about you as a pastor and a leader is you allow the Holy Spirit to kind of dictate the Sundays. You might have a plan and you'll throw it out the window if you feel like the Lord is calling you to something else. You might keep worship longer. The sermon might go longer, but it's because you're allowing God to do what he needs to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really rare because I feel church has become more of a business to where they're getting people in. Okay, here's the 30-minute sermon, the 20-minute worship. Okay, go on with your day. We can't keep you longer because then you might not come back.
Yeah.
But allowing for you to freely allow the Holy Spirit to speak to you. And I think that also comes from you spending time with him throughout the week to
Yes.
prepare for that. And you do know his voice. I think that's also a reason why your church is growing at the speed it's growing, is because people really are encountering God. It's not, okay, he's preaching to me, I'm learning things, and that's it. There's like a
Right.
life-changing thing that's happening from the inside out because you've given God that environment
Yeah.
to do what he wants to do. And I think that's really great to see because you don't always see that a lot.
Yeah. Thank you. That really means a lot for sure. That's what we go for, is helping people encounter God. I don't want you to learn about God. Even the demons, believe in God. The demons know what the Bible says, but they don't serve God. They don't know him personally,
Mm-hmm.
um, have a relationship with him. So that's what we want for people. So thank you for noticing that. That does mean a lot to me. That helps me as a pastor know that there's people that see what we're doing is hopefully on the right track. So
Yeah. And last question for reals. Is
okay,
there any
for real.
question that I did not ask you that you wish I had asked you?
Oh man, question that you didn't ask. Oh my goodness. There's been some really good ones though. I'm gonna be honest. You've asked
Thank
some
you.
really um
Or anything that you want to touch on that you didn't that we haven't touched on.
oh man. You know what? I suppose we could talk, even just what's next. What's next for Radical, man? I know we talked about 5-year plan. You did actually ask this question. You asked like in the next year, like what you want to see happen. But man, I really do feel like uh our church is going to go, we're going to 3 services right now. I feel like we're going to go to 4 services. Maybe a question that we could talk about. I'm curious your thoughts. I might ask you a question. We'll flip the script a little bit.
Okay. I do that too at the end. We're jumping there.
Ooh, let's
Yeah.
go. So, how about if you had a choice, what service times would you choose if you were doing? So we have 3 now, and we're going to 9, 10:30, and noon. So we're squeezing them together a little more than I personally like, but it's hard when you have volunteers there that are all day sometimes. We're at 9 and 11 right now. So we have a huge gap in between, which gives us a whole lot of room to do whatever we want really in both services. But now it is going to have to be a little bit shorter. We're cutting one song in worship. So we're going from 4 to 3. I'm going to have to preach a normal amount of time sometimes. I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful in the first 2 anyway. In the last one, I'm just going to go rogue. But um,
I
if
like
you
that I just talked to you about letting the Holy Spirit do whatever it wants. And you're like, oh, now we're cutting out a song. No.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know. Oh, I
But
don't
that's
like
growing pains, right? Until you figure it out.
exactly. And that's what I tell our team. I'm like, listen, guys, we're gonna have to do what we have to do until we can get out of here. And that's kind of the problem we're facing right now is our building. We've already outgrown it. And so if we could get into the next building, or we have 2 years left on our lease, but man, we would love to go ahead and run some kind of a campaign quickly to start raising funds for the next place already, which I know sounds crazy. We just opened our building in April. but we're already at that point where we're going to need to get out of here. And so we have 3 services. If you were going to add a 4th eventually, because we're probably going to have to, would you add it on Sunday morning and just put it at like 2:00 or something, 1:30 or 2? Would you put it Sunday evening at around 5 or 6:00? Would you do a Saturday night service, or the last option, do a weekday? Like I know some churches have done Monday or Tuesday nights. I know some churches that do Thursday or Friday nights. Where would you put that 4th service if it was you?
Okay. So if I was being selfish and didn't care if you had days off, I would put it Saturday night.
Exactly. That's what I was.
But then you would only have one day off.
Correct.
So I wouldn't want that, because then you'll burn out and then you won't be great. So then I would say maybe a Wednesday evening, because a lot of churches do midweek service.
Okay.
Or I do like the Sunday night. I think doing 4 services in a row on Sunday, 1, you'll burn out, and 2, honestly, maybe it's just me, but getting to church that late, your whole day is gone.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like even pushing it at like noon is late, because really you have enough time to get ready, go to church, and then and Sundays when people like get ready for the week.
Oh yeah. Well, and the thought behind it is you do 8:30, 10, 11:30. The 8:30 is too early, right? So noon is too late for the third. If you do it 9, 10:30 and noon, sometimes the noon is going to feel a little too late. Like 11:30 would be better.
And we know how you Texans are with your football.
Yeah, exactly. So but 9 feels a lot better than 8:30, so it's like it's give and take.
You could do 8:30.
Well, it depends on the demographic too. If you have a lot of older folks in your church, 8:30 is fantastic, as a matter of fact. But if you want to reach younger families, the 9 is going to be a little bit easier.
Which is what Kyle mainly is.
Exactly. And we have a very diverse church. They have a youth room and then the main room. So like you can have a Wednesday night church service, and then the youth do theirs, the adults do theirs, and the kids even have their own thing. So like everybody comes on Wednesday night. But for us, because of our small building, it's 6,000 square feet. The youth take over the whole space, which is cool. I love it. I'm like, y'all have fun.
Well, that's great that you have that many youth to do that.
Yeah, they have about 40 or 50 every single Wednesday night now, which is great. Rachel and Udi are doing a fantastic job with that. And they're Californians as well, actually. Oh. They came from kind of small town, Cali, Carruthers, California. I don't know if you know where that is, but it is small. I can't remember where it's close to, but I think it's closer to like northern. Where are you at?
I'm in like Silicon Valley, so I'm more northern.
Okay. All right, cool. So it's probably not too terribly far away. But yeah, so they're from there, and they kind of came on a word from the Lord, and they've done a great job. So they take that over. I think I've seen some churches. There's one in particular I'm thinking of that does a Thursday night, and I kind of like that in one sense, because then you could still have your Friday and Saturday off. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or like a Monday night. I know some people that do that, because then you still have your Sunday night off, and then you go to church, or then you go to work, and then you just do one more service in the evening. So for anybody, I like the evening service on a different day, because if somebody works on Sundays, or they're out of town on weekends, or like just, I don't know, like weird stuff, you're going to be able to catch all those people. Ideally, as far as most people, Saturday night is going to be the best, though. Like that's most church participants want to come on a Saturday night, but no staff member wants to be there on a Saturday night. And people don't want to serve on Saturday night either. They just want to come. So
Or you can look at it as who are you trying to get? Because,
Yeah.
if you look at it that way and you're trying to reach more of the college age, like that are in San Marcos, you can look at that. I think
Yeah.
also if you can pinpoint, like, okay, this is what our church is, I would love, because you're already ministering there, right? You're already ministering on that campus. So I don't know if that's, that seems like logically, if you're already ministering there, you're already involved, they would have somewhere to go on Sundays or
Yeah.
on another day and they already know you and they feel comfortable, they like you, you're
Yeah.
already there. So if you're ministering to them, um, you can probably do like a Thursday night because you got to think their classes are usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Right.
and then like a Thursday night or
Yeah.
even a 6 o'clock Friday. They're going to want to still go to the square. So that gives them time to like at least get church and then do whatever they want to do. But at least, so if you're looking to minister more towards college, I would say probably like a Thursday night or, I mean, even Saturday night works. But
Yeah.
I
It's
guess it
tough.
would depend if you're looking with that.
It's
It's tough,
tough.
but
Growing
it is.
pains. That's what we need
I
to
just
build.
wouldn't do all four in one day. I feel like that would be exhausting very quickly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a tough thing, but if we can get a new space and we can get a building that's our own and that can seat, I don't know what we would build if I could just build from the ground up. I mean, we have 300 in our church right now. I think I'd love to build a, 600 to 800 seat auditorium. I think that'd be fantastic. I'd be very happy with that. And then grow into that one. So,
Then
um,
that's when you start planting in other places.
exactly. Exactly. So, hey, who
Yeah,
knows? One day.
you'll get there
Oh, yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Well, this was a really good conversation.
Thanks. Yeah. You asked some great questions. You're super
Thank
prepared.
you.
Really, really good questions. Ones that I wouldn't even think to ask. I don't feel like. So,
Oh, thank you.
great.
I do